the Indigenous peoples. Let us acknowledge the mistakes and traumas of the past through authenticity and support truth and reconciliation. Let us engage and celebrate Indigenous communities by being leaders of action and acknowledging the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples and the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's recommendations towards truth and reconciliation. Let us keep these principles close as we continue towards truth and reconciliation and as we move forward with kindness and respect as a community. Does any member of council have any declaration of pecuniary interest? Okay. Hearing none, moving on to the adoption of the minutes. I have moved by Councillor Tyler Morin, second by Councillor Bauer, that the following minutes of previous council meetings be adopted. The special meeting of February 11th, 2021, and the regular meeting of March 22nd, 2021. Any errors and omissions or amendments to the minutes? Okay, hearing none. Those in favor of approval? I see all hands. That's carried. Thank you. Mr. Clerk, I understand that there were no requests for questions from the public tonight.
That's correct, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Moving on to delegations and presentations, we have our first presentation, a 2021 West Division Community Safety Plan, Inspector Mitch Martin, Superintendent, and Glenn Cornier. Oops, I can't read that. Sorry, you took it off too quick. And Superintendent Glenn Cornier and Staff Sergeant Kevin Yamada. Whenever you're ready, gentlemen, please.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and councilors. We certainly appreciate you allowing us to take time of your meeting tonight. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to present to you our 2021 Community Safety Plan. It is the statistics that we'll be bringing you will be specific to Ajax, not the combination of Ajax and Pickering, but Ajax. And when we go through the numbers, we'll be looking at what happened in 2019, 2020, and some hopes for 2021. Obviously, it's been a very difficult year. The past year, the statistics are a little bit off because of COVID. So we could really brag about how many things we've done great this year, but in fact, it's just been such a change in the community and the way it moves that a lot of the statistics are simply down. But we will talk to you about those. Other than that, Superintendent Cornier, he expresses his regrets. He was the SIU on-call liaison this weekend, was extremely busy with the events that occurred over this weekend. So the slide presentation is up. Thank you very much, Alex. If we could go on to slide 1. My understanding is you want us to stick to around 10 minutes for this presentation, and then I'll open up the floor to questions after. So the first section of our community safety plan is the commitment to improve roadway safety. Looking first at effective reductions in motor vehicle collisions to the town of Ajax. Just so you're aware that motor vehicle collisions in 2020 were down 24% from 2019. And again, a lot of these numbers have had to skew just because the lack of people moving around. We will continue with the enforcement that we have continued with. And really one of the more significant things is provincial offenses notices or tickets between 2019 and 2020 were only down 2%. So we wrote 6,834 tickets in 2019 and 6,688 in 2020. So officers are still out there doing their enforcement. It's just sort of in waves with the COVID. We want to affect a reduction in instances where impaired driving was the factor in motor vehicle collisions. We are in fact down 26% in impaired driving charges. So they've fallen from 136 to 101. We have Divisional Platoon initiate a project to reinforce specific high-risk driver behavior. So the known sort of big 4 driving behaviors, our officers know to focus on those. So distracted driving, seatbelts, speeding, and reckless driving. And that goes tied sort of hand in hand with the PONs. We're doing some educational awareness utilizing social media through Twitter, both through the traffic services unit and ourselves, just to sort of continue to educate people on safety measures they can take. And we're continuing the Road Watch Safety Steering Committee and Vision Zero. And of course, that's our traffic safety officer is committed and involved in those meetings, and then takes the meeting information and brings it out to the platoons. So in fact, our traffic coordinator is exactly that, as a coordinator, as opposed to an enforcement officer. Although the officer does do enforcement, their primary focus is getting the information out to the platoons and steering them to the proper areas for enforcement. And the big 3 intersections for problems in Ajax through analysis is all along Kingston, at Harwood, Kingston and Salem, and Kingston and Weston. They're the 3 big intersections for collisions. We can move on to the next slide, please. The next focus on our community safety plan is property crime reduction strategies. We want to affect an increase on break and enter clearance rates in the town of Ajax. It's been an interesting year for break and enter offenses. Overall, those offenses are down 20%. So from 2,192 to 1,754. Where the anomaly starts is break and enters to residents that are down 34%, so 92 to 60. But the break and enter to commercial premises are up 24%, 33 to 41. So obviously we have vacant businesses that are getting broken into in the evening, and people are home through the day when they used to be traveling into Toronto or elsewhere to work, and so those are not happening as much. Our second point is to educate seniors about crime trends. We're doing that virtually, and our division has really taken on the ability to do education using Zoom, Teams meetings, whether they're dealing with public schools, high schools, interest groups. We're doing what we used to do the same way you and I are speaking right now. We've gone virtual with a lot of our training. So we've been showing a fair amount of agility. We're a little slow catching on, but we're more involved in a lot of groups that we were involved in previously, and we're just doing it virtually. To effect a reduction in vehicle thefts in the town of Ajax, you might have been quite aware we were having a lot of problems with high-end vehicle thefts, Lexuses, Toyotas. We are losing sometimes as many as 7 in a weekend. We teamed up with Peel Regional Police and York Regional Police in a project called Project Majestic. That involved, I believe it was roughly $20 million of vehicles were located, and they're being stolen and shipped overseas. So our thefts are up 20%. So we had 112 vehicle thefts, up from 93 the year before. This year has been an obvious spike, but Project Majestic hopefully will have reduced some of the ongoing vehicle thefts. But these are very organized groups, and we're hearing that sometimes they have as many as 10 teams out simultaneously going around stealing high-end vehicles. So a car will have 3 people in it. We call that a team. The 2 people can obviously exit the car and steal. So one team can take 2 cars and have the bad vehicle and the suspect vehicle. And sometimes they have as many 10 as 10 out in the night. So they can do a lot of damage in an evening. We go to the next slide, please. The violent crime reduction strategy. Well, obviously, we want to decrease violent crime in the town of Ajax. Overall, violent crimes are down 14% from 2019 to 2020. So 617 to 533. We want to increase clearance rates for violent offenses in the town of Ajax. Again, the clearance rates will have more accurate information as time goes on, but they pretty well stay status quo. Compliance checks are something we're really working on developing a more effective way to do it. They're unfortunately down 16% into 2020. And a lot of that is just related simply to the officer's sort of hesitation to go on to certain buildings during COVID to do compliance checks. And I, to be quite frankly, have supported my officers in those decisions where when the numbers are really high, they're not wanting to enter buildings to do compliance checks. That will change in the future. What we're doing, as I said, to be more efficient about it is we developed a field intelligence officer in Pickering, or in West Division this year. And the concept is this officer deals with Toronto Police and York, and we get a better idea about people who have been charged that are traveling from Toronto or York and Durham. And what's happening is often they're offending in Toronto, but they're living in Durham. And so we really don't, in Durham, we don't know what their conditions are, whether we should be doing compliance checks on them. So this information, our field intelligence officer gathers it and really highlights the dangerous people that are living in our community, and allows us to do more frequent compliance checks on them to make sure they're staying at home, they're following the rules, and if they're not, it's easier for us to breach them. The young gentleman that was shot in North York over the weekend is a Ajax gentleman. I believe he's 24 years of age. He's on firearms charges with us. And Toronto had no idea that he was going into the Toronto area. So unfortunately, it was a result of a homicide. We were able to update Toronto what was happening. But I'm telling you, things you already know is people are incredibly mobile right now, traveling jurisdiction to jurisdiction. They don't follow the borders anymore. Proactive patrol, we obviously, our officers know to be active on proactive patrol with their downtime. I would like to say my officers have a lot of downtime, but that's simply not true. But they do have specific prones or target areas that they're proactively patrol basing on time of day. So more of an intelligence-led model, again, where we can guide our officers where to be at what time of day if you have downtime and patrol those areas. The CIB Target Team Violent Crime Reduction Steering Committee is a group that we're working on with our target team to meet with members of the community and come up with reduction strategies. That program took a bit of a hit in 2020, just the ability to get people together and meet while we were dealing with the pandemic. It's something we would like to get more in line in 2021 when we can just get better at meeting. The NOC initiatives, the notification of community crime, you're familiar with. That's something we used at Gamble Drive after the back-to-back shootings. So we had about 8 of our members do a canvass of that community, sort of 2 purposes. One is to educate the community about what's going on and what we do about the shooting, obviously to try to gather evidence that it's available, and give the opportunity for the community members to ask us or engage the police as far as what we're doing, what we know. It was as successful as it could have been, given the trauma the community suffered with those 2 back-to-back shootings. If I go to the next slide, please. Community engagement and innovation of service delivery. Obviously, we want to enhance positive police-community relations and awareness on emerging issues. Enhancing police engagement with all communities through focus outreach, training, and stakeholder consultation. This is where we've made a bit of a change with our service, or specifically on West Division, is engagements with school programs that virtually stopped through 2021. Staff Yamada is very engaged with the community, and he set up a program now where our officers are sitting in the exact same boardroom I'm in right now, and they're calling into public schools and meeting with the grades 1s, 2s, and 3s, a classroom of 20 children, and the officers, they're reading stories to them. It's tremendously rewarding to the officers, and it's sort of getting us entry into the community again in areas we kind of lost control. What will be interesting is we have fewer school officers this year, and I think this is going to fill the gap a little bit next year when schools get up and running in the fall, God willing, and we'll be able to have regular patrol officers engage with schools through the day, and the school safety officers can focus on other schools. So it's going to broaden our exposure to the community groups. The Divisional Community Safety Advisory Council, Staff Yamada is working on it now to strengthen and get that up and running again. It suffered a bit of a hit through 2020. Diversity competent members. Staff Yamada, I keep on saying his name, but he's doing incredible work with this division. He started a West Division Equity Inclusion Working Group. And the idea is to help our members in the division understand diversity competence, and not just externally in the community, but internally in the division, so that we're understanding what we're doing and how we see each other at work, as well as when engaged with the community. We have a very diverse division here, and Kevin is making it a stronger division by sort of building on that diversity. Our social media strategy, it's, quite frankly, it's not super strong. We have our Twitter account. We have a West Division email. That's about it. Police are generally poor in advertising our product because our product is great to sell. But we do let our media deal with that on a more regular basis. Our media unit has hired a new videographer, and they're going to be producing more videos to release to the public. More of obviously a regional approach than a West Division approach. Next slide, please. Enhanced communication. We want to ensure enhanced communication in a timely fashion. The one thing I want to point out about that, Mr. Mayor, you're more than aware that I'm available on my cell phone whenever you need to speak with me, and we actually spoke a couple times this weekend. Kevin spent almost 30 years in major crime, much like myself, and we answer our phone 24/7. So we're available to any council member, to the mayor. If you have problems or concerns, shoot us an email or call us, and we are available for you. I think everybody here appreciates that already. Emerging crime tents are communicated with frontline members. We have a very strong crime analyst, Chris Doney, at this division. He's working remotely because of COVID, but he regularly communicates with myself and Kevin, and that information is taken down to frontline officers. It's part of that intelligence-led policing where we truly anticipate crimes. And just a quick example, last spring, Goodwood Conservation Area got hammered with vehicle windows being smashed and valuables being stolen in cars. It just started last week. A couple of cars had their windows smashed. Chris Doney picked up on it right away, and we've set up a prone for increased patrol in the parking lots because we know by pattern that it's going to pick up. So again, good intelligence-led policing. Our community bonds we want to strengthen those. We're working on that best we can through the patrol into the community and presenting to the councils. It's part of getting our message out there. The final part is being aware that the service priorities of the CPL give an overall sense of inclusion. So not only are we presenting it to the councils, Kevin and I present the community safety plan to the officers to help them understand what their patrol directives are, what they want to look at, what's important to the community, and help them understand how they should move forward themselves. Next slide, please. Social development, responding effectively to the changing nature of harm. This has been just an incredibly challenging year for all of us in dealing with the increase of mental health calls, our officers' own mental health, having people stay at home. We're doing the best to modernize the way we do work. Durham Connect with West Division. Durham Connect is a system that's set up by Paul Martin, actually Chief Martin, quite a few years ago. And it allows to identify people that are in great need and get them the services they need. We do have a committed officer for that on each platoon. The 2-on-1 system came to our attention about a year ago, and we've developed 2-on-1 pamphlets that we give it to all of our officers so they can engage the 2-on-1 system to help get immediate need for members of the community. More often, police wouldn't have the answers. With a simple check of the web page or a phone call, we can find a hot meal, a place for them to sleep. And that's actually turned out to be a pretty good system for us. Finally, Korea, it's not on the slide, but Staff Yamada had developed a contact with Korea, which is a care in your area. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's in Ajax as well. We did a cruiser event about 2 weeks ago, and a vast amount of food was collected. And it was split between Ajax, Pickering, and Oshawa. So it's just one of the new things that we've noted that we're able to help out with. I'm sorry, I got my final slide to go. So last slide is the Pickering Casino. We've developed a pretty strong relationship with security and management there. We've been doing tours of the casino, so our people will be up to speed on what it looks like. Most of our platoon members have toured it. We've had our labor liaison unit, tactical support, major crime, divisional inspectors tour the casino. We just realized or got a message that the casino now is shut down for tours. They decided to go into lockdown mode as well. We did meet with them. They're expecting to go to orange zone whenever the province permits it. It'll be a 50-person capacity, 24/7. until we move it into the proper zone. So it's going to cause an ultimate soft opening eventually as we follow through the provincial zones so we can reopen the province. It's a big casino, as you're aware. Our concerns are probably going to be around traffic capacity as the casino ramps up to full volume, but that's something you're more than aware of. So that completes my presentation. I'm sorry it was a bit rushed, but there's a lot of data. And as I promised, I would turn the floor over to questions if you had any.
Thank you very much, Inspector Martin. I have a few councillors who've asked to speak. First with Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Inspector Martin, for the presentation. Really great work West Division is doing for our ward, and yeah, it's frustrating seeing these like high-end auto thefts, and the strategy around it hopefully is comprehensive, and hopefully we'll start seeing results from it. My first question was on regards to, so I'd asked this question at the region. Chief Roller was unable to give me the numbers, but in terms of West Division, do you have any statistics on hate-motivated crimes?
Yes, we do. So what is happening right now is the intelligence unit is responsible for the investigation or oversight of hate crimes. Sort of what's developing in hate crimes, which is kind of interesting. In 2019, they're showing there was 41 hate related incidents in the region. 2 occurred in Ajax and 5 were in Pickering. In 2020, there was 42 crimes, 2 in Ajax and 4 in Pickering. So that statistically, the numbers sort of stayed the same across the region and stayed the same in each town. Kevin and I were talking about this, and there's a bit of a trend that the actual hate crimes are occurring a little farther to the west, or sorry, east, a little farther to the north. And part of our discussion, we're not sociologists, but part of our discussion was that when you end up with communities that have a higher diversity count, we think there's a less chance of sort of that hate crime interaction. That's just sort of a look at it from our perspective. There is a bit of a trend that there's an increase in race-related crimes and a decrease in religion-related crimes. And so what they're seeing is some of the hate crimes that are occurring are specifically based on race when they used to be more based on religion. Some of that they're tying into potentially the pandemic. So there's been somewhat of a small increase in anti-Asian hate crime. And there was an increase in hate crimes that were anti-Black that happened in 2019, almost based at the end of the pandemic or the beginning of the pandemic. So the numbers, any hate crime is disturbing, but the actual numbers of hate crimes in Ajax and Pickering might be lower than you expect. We've had a few that Kevin and I are aware of this year that could in fact be hate crimes. One I can share with you is one of the mosques had it looks like a projectile impact on a window. It's not a gunshot. It's probably more like a pellet shot or a BB shot. Well, we're classifying that as a potential hate crime because it happened to a mosque. It could be a kid that also shot it with a pellet gun. We don't know, but that's how we would classify that as a potential hate crime. And then if we received more information, obviously be classified properly. Councillor Lee, does that give you as much information as you want, or did you have a specific question?
Just a follow up to that. So Chief Rowler is also saying that DRPS suspects there's actually a significant portion of unreported hate motivated crimes. Now it's a weird question, but if the DRPS were based on analytics were to guess how many unreported crimes, would that move the needle from 40 to 50, 50 to 60, or maybe 40 to 45, for example?
I'm not going to guess on the potential
that's fair.
misreporting, but I would agree with the chief's sort of analysis of that, is that somebody could simply there was some graffiti in Pickering that was painted on a fence a while back, and it was some really loose statements that were hard to understand, but the officer took the time to sort of Google a couple of the statements and realized it was quotes from one of the books that Adolf Hitler had written. So it was very innocent on the look of it, but the officer took the time to investigate it a bit further, realized it's a hate-motivated crime. That being said, just as easily, the officer could have commented that there was spray painting on the fence, took a report and moved on. The community could also make the same errors and not realize it. So do I believe that some mischief, especially property type of mischief, that's a hate crime would go unrecognized? I do believe that.
Thank you for that. That is actually, it's unfortunate to hear, especially in an area diverse as Ajax Pickering, but it's a grim reality of these circumstances. So just, I want to kind of keep going. You mentioned that the officers were hesitating during compliance checks out of fear of, I'm assuming, their own personal safety. Is that a correct assumption?
Yeah, it's the exposure to COVID. So I think we've all learned that congregate lifestyles increase your chance of getting COVID. Ajax and Pickering have some of the highest COVID numbers, not as high as farther west in the GTA, but we have respectively high numbers.
Right.
So the officers were, sort of weighing the role of doing a compliance check in a high-rise building versus doing other tasks. And I would suggest that it's not much different than right now with the numbers so high and officers engaging in traffic stops. There's going to be a decrease in traffic stops over the next couple of weeks. Officers will be pulling over people that really are drawing the officer's attention because they have to get into a window, although they're wearing their masks and their goggles, they're now face-to-face with somebody. They're exchanging documents. I think the officers have a very healthy fear of this, and they are inoculated. The vast majority of my officers have received their needles, but that doesn't mean that you can't contract the virus and take it home to your significant other or your children. So although they are inoculated, they have a healthy fear of COVID, and it is altering some of the proactive work that they do, including compliance checks and traffic stops.
And that makes a ton of sense, and we absolutely, I speak for myself at least, I support that that call, so to speak. One more thing in your presentation, you mentioned that community outreach used, and I quote, in areas that we lost control. So what does that mean exactly? What is an area that we would have lost control in, or that
more what I was referring to is where we've lost some of the contact. It was so easy 2 years ago to just arrange a meeting. We'd all get together and we talk, and the transition to online or virtual meetings, I'm going to suggest, and I can only speak for our own division, but we're a little bit slow adapting to it. We might have had 3 cameras in this division at the end of 2019. We have a camera on every computer now. So we've slowly adjusted, and then we've gone to trying to rebuild some of the community groups. That being said, a lot of the members of community groups that could simply come to a meeting, if I send them a Zoom or a Teams invitation, they might not have a laptop or a computer or a camera. So it's both sides of the fence. And again, you are fully aware that the complexities of sort of changing to a virtual world and holding meetings on the internet and getting people to attend has been a bit of a challenge. And I think we've sort of adjusted, but the groups that we've sort of lost, that we haven't not having the regular meetings with, we've got to get them back and engage them. Whether we find different ways that they can phone in while we're on a Teams meeting, but we'll figure that out and we'll strengthen up those relationships.
I'm glad to hear that. My last question, and then I have a statement after that, is so I've had some complaints across the board. And I don't want you to think it's a lot, but it's a shared complaint that if an area experiences crime, so for example, there were shootings, a pair of shootings, which you mentioned the NOCC in North Ajax. We had a series of break-ins in the past Taunton North Ajax. And I guess the complaint I'm getting from residents is, what is the DRPS policy in the follow-up after a complaint and a report's been filed? So I think the biggest concern right now, and these residents are pretty engaged with their own community, is that if they don't hear from DRPS, what happens is the rumors and the conjecture starts up again. And it actually becomes far more harmful for the community than if the police just said, we're still following leads. I understand you can't comment on active investigations, but it's a matter of ensuring our residents have as much information so that they don't feel the need to make up stories or make up, urban legends and whatnot, because I find that actually creates more distrust within the community, and that's obviously not what we're working towards. So I was just hoping you can comment on what is generally the policy for DRPS for the after a crime, like the follow-up, so to speak.
Well, we probably don't have a strong policy on that. I mean, we have the response down packed quite well as far as holding scenes and collecting evidence. We have a very strong investigative branch that follows up leads and frees up our uniform patrol to go to the next call for service. But other than turning over to the detectives, it kind of becomes a separate entity. It moves away from uniform patrol, which I control, to investigative services, which actually I don't control in my own division. My detectives work out of my division, but they report to a different inspector. We talk all the time. It's not like we're disconnected. The next piece to that puzzle is our crime analyst, who then, is sort of continually looking at all the reports and calls for service that comes in and starts developing patterns. So when you ask for reports or information, that's where it comes from. The crime analyst then sort of encourages or suggests patrol patterns in certain areas that need increases. We had a stabbing down at the lakefront recently where four people were stabbed in total. In that particular incident, everybody's in custody. It's been investigated to completion and people have been charged. But Chris Doney, my crime analyst, then got involved in doing a full analysis, and he reported back to me, he says, there is an unnatural spike in calls for service in that area. It's by the lakefront. People are hanging out there, but I would suggest some more negative criminal activities happening. So we've created a prone or an enforcement area. So as I said, officers will head out and when they're looking for work, they look at their computer and go, this is a good time to go down to the lakefront. As far as sharing information with the community, there's a couple things. The DRPA or the DRPS website does have a crime tracking tool that you can go to, and it shows the calls in the area, major calls, a real short description of what happened, a stabbing at a location or something like that, commercial break-ins. That's about the extent of it. The follow-up really becomes just with the victim at that point. Detectives deal with the victims. The community at large might see a media release, but that's it.
I appreciate that, and I think ultimately that's something regional council would have to work with the police board with, then, of formalizing some sort of aftercare. No different than if you went to the hospital and had surgery. I just find, again, like I heard it repeatedly from different areas of my own ward, and that's where it became this issue of just like, I just want to make sure that residents don't go on social media and share misinformation, because that is absolutely not what's helping DRPS with their crimes.
Yeah, and I apologize for looking away for a second. Kevin was just reminding about a conversation we had specifically about Gamble Drive. And through that sort of canvas door to door, one of the things we sort of thought about after was some sort of community healing. So we met people. If you watch the news that night, there was a lady that was just irate with our officers. And she had a child in the house that was distressed because of the shooting, understandably so. We were able to explain to her what we're doing and able to calm the situation down. But the real thing is that was a call for help. She was expressing to us, I need some sort of assistance, not from the police, but somebody to talk to. And we didn't bring that in our toolbox. And that it typically is something the police don't bring in their toolbox, is some sort of counseling, grief counseling. And we're more than a day away from that. It'll take us a while for her to get that sort of thing in our toolbox. But during knock initiatives, I can see us in the future bringing information about care that you can get if you're suffering from stress or in crisis because of a crime that occurred in your community.
That is a absolutely amazing idea that I think this entire council would support, as well as regional council. I said I had one last comment. I just want to point out that it seems that Sergeant Yamada seems to be doing a lot of outreach work, and specifically, as you said, towards diversity and inclusion. So I just want to say that's, I keep hearing his name in regards to these efforts within the region, within West Division. So I'm glad, as the inspector of West Division, you have this kind of go-to for these kind of policies. They are becoming more important, especially in Ajax, especially in Pickering. So I just want to say that, thank you for taking that initiative. And overall, again, West Division has always been one of the top tier divisions in the region. And of course, we're a little biased because you take care of us. But I just want to say, thank you to you and your officers for everything you do and for answering these questions tonight. So thank you for letting me go long, Chair.
Thank you, sir.
No problem. Moving on, Councillor Tyler Moore is next.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Staff Yamada and Inspector Martin, for all the work you're doing and to your service. I know you've been going over and above during COVID. I really like the fact that in your presentation, thank you for the presentation, you mentioned educating seniors on crime trends. I remember attending, before I was councillor, at a school gymnasium back in the day when we could all get together. There was a good scenario, good meeting that you put on, DRP put on, and for seniors. And for what was interesting at that time was they didn't really mention much about, you know, property crime, theft, vandalism, break-ins. It was all the questions were about identity theft, fraud, and financial crime. So since that time, I've heard horror stories from friends of mine and their parents really running into trouble. So I'm just wondering, during these difficult times, as far as communication, you already alluded to it in regards to Zoom calls, although we've seen our seniors come on Zoom calls quite well in our ward meetings and in some of the meetings that Mayor Collier's been having. Is there an incentive right now? Is there something that we can still get that information to them, to speak to them about, you know, that phone call that comes and they get nervous about tax collections? Is there anything going on right now, or something that maybe we could do, or anything we can help with?
So I'm just looking at my stats. So fraud and identity theft in our recording system falls under property offenses. And interestingly enough, it is, if you can combine break and enters, theft from motor vehicles, theft of motor vehicles, it doesn't total the fraud and identity theft. So fraud and identity theft was 483 in 2020, up from 466 in 2019. It will be higher this year, I can guarantee you, because the criminals and fraudsters are having to find things to do where they don't have to leave their house.
Right.
Education typically comes from our major crimes unit fraud branch. They typically would be doing the education. We don't have anything sort of a prepared deck that I could use right now, but at the end of a phone call, I could have a deck through the fraud unit. I'm sure they have them prepared. It's something we need to be conscious of, again, because we just know the frauds are increasing.
Yeah.
Kevin, again, is just prodding me with his little cattle prod here under the desk. It's also, when we referenced earlier the older adults police academy, that was, we did that in 2019. And I actually presented at that time, I was a duty inspector, presented at the academy. And the concept was to run about 4 or 5 of the academies per year. And it would have sort of role models or strong people in the seniors communities that would learn what we do and then take the messages back to their community. And then they would have the contacts. They knew they could phone Mitch Martin or Kevin Yamada and ask questions. We have planned to try to do a virtual academy this year if COVID keeps on charging on. But again, like, I feel embarrassed sometimes when I say I feel like we've dropped the ball. But on that education piece, we've struggled to get the message out. The seniors community is sometimes even more challenging in their ability to access internet, Teams meetings, Zoom, when they're used to just calling the bank and doing stuff. So it was a little bit of a gap we're having a problem getting over.
Right. So I'm hearing a lexicon, hydro, calling, and they present themselves as that. Utilities, you know, all seniors have utilities. Okay, I just wanted to finish by saying, if there's anything we can do, I know that without even checking with our regional councillor Crawford and I would be more than happy to have one of your officers on, and maybe we could even promote one of our ward meetings as a safety meeting, not just for seniors, and we could talk about that's something I would have to ask Marilyn about. I'm just being a little bold here. I think she would be into that, and we'd be into that. I can't speak for my other councillors. Anyways, I'll leave it at that, but thanks for keeping it part of the conversation, and maybe we'll reach out to you at some point on that. Thank you, Inspector.
Thank you for the support. Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Crawford, next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a few questions. Did you want to let people go ahead of me?
No, go ahead.
Are you
Your
sure?
turn.
Okay. First of all, I wanted to say how proud I was of DRPS standing in unity with the Ontario Police around the last lockdown request. and standing up for our civil rights. I really, really am proud of that. Saying that, I know that you still have jobs that need to be done, and I often get questioned about what happens when a police is called to a situation where perhaps there's more than 5 people gathering outside. So on the weekend, apparently there was a soccer game and a resident called the police, and then they came and yelled at me because they didn't think you did your job. But I don't really know what your job is. So I don't really know how to answer the question. So can you just kind of walk through what your response is when somebody calls you around a large gathering?
Yeah, so we have officers that are specifically trained on the Reopening of Ontario Act to respond to those calls. The truth of the matter, is that sometimes we're not the most appropriate agency, right? We're carrying firearms and batons, going to a soccer game, trying to enforce an act that has just been brought into place. So my officers understand directly from me that this really is all about education and compliance, just trying to help them understand that this isn't the best idea. If we do, so first of all, I'm confident my officers are able to managing these things. They're not showing up and writing netfuls of tickets to children or adults. It's more about the education part. If the observations are such that they're going, there's actually some pretty clear offenses going on. So construction at a house, a restaurant that's still open, a nail parlor that's open. At that point, the officers are going to collect everybody's information, forward that back to our emergency operations center, and they're going to farm it out through bylaw or health department, and we'll determine what charges are appropriate. Because even the Crown attorneys are suffering with how are they going to proceed with these charges. So for the most part, the officers understand that they can get through with education and helping people understand why they shouldn't be doing this. It beats walking in lane tickets. So that's sort of the philosophy that we have. And I think everybody saw that on Friday, that Mr. Ford sort of indicated that the police will do this. They will stop people walking or driving and demand to know where they're going. And sometimes the police just get picked because they're the only agency that can kind of fill the role. And the police knew. As soon as I heard that on Friday afternoon, I'm like, we're not doing that. And of course, I waited for direction from the chief, but it's contrary to what we should be doing as police. It's unheard of times, and this is obviously very difficult on people. And Mr. Ford would like everybody just to simply stay home to stop the spread of the disease. But we were just simply not the right agency to do that. So I know people were afraid that we were going to be charging out, and we have this new power, and we're going to be horrible people. That just was not going to occur. I don't believe any division will expect or let it happen. Certainly the chief was not supportive of it. It just took them a little time to message that out because this is very new for us as well.
Yeah. Thank you. We won't get into our political views on that, but yes. Thank you. I really appreciate that that this whole COVID situation has made us all look at our jobs very differently, and policing being a hands-on job is really must be difficult for you to be able to pivot as quicker than most people. So I do appreciate what you guys have been put into, and we really appreciate you keeping us safe. I'm not sure, Inspector Martin, if you were at Vision Zero last week, but we talked about street racing, and we talked about the big pipes on cars and how loud they are and how disturbing they are to residents in the neighborhoods, especially now with the warmer weather. And so what I was wondering about was, I understand the pipe situation is because of we don't do the inspection, just left my brain. The inspection on the exhaust. Remember, we used to have to go in and get, after a certain age car.
Clean air testing.
That's it. We don't do that anymore. So they are more at liberty to put these loud things or take these things off their cars, creating these really loud noises. Do we have any control? Is there anything you can do about that? Like, I don't even know how you catch them, to be honest with you. So I'm just asking.
So yes, so first of all, I was not at the meeting. However, Colin Lamanis has kept me updated on the contents of the meetings. This is not unique to Ajax Pickering by any stretch of the imagination. It's across the entire GTA. There seems to be an explosion of street racing. You've seen takeovers of intersections where these super hyped up cars are doing incredible stunts. In order to do that, they need to pretty well disable almost all of the environmental systems of the car. And they're doing it at shops. Shops know it's illegal, but they're doing it. Where the issue is, so our traffic safety unit, we have probably 4 or 6 officers that actually know how to plug in one of those computers into the car, check the system, see what modifications have been done. And then what they're allowed to do is they're allowed to take the license plates off the car and seize them. And they notify the ministry to say this car does not follow environmental standards, and they have to fix that before they get a new set of license plates.
Wow.
So it can be very expensive all of a sudden. They've done $10,000 of modifications to their car, and now they got to unmodify it to get it back to operating conditions. As I said, I have a half a dozen of those officers that can do that. They could be going nonstop. How we're going to deal with it, I don't know. I mean, we have the typical racing. So if we get a person doing more than 50 over the speed limit, car goes to jail for 7 days. The tickets are issued. Insurance becomes onerous. But it really comes down to just straight enforcement and getting the right people doing the enforcement. We just don't have a lot of people trained for it right now.
Right.
Okay. Now we do attend car rallies. I think we were talking earlier in the call, perhaps before you were on, but the last rally we had in Pickering, it was here in Pickering. I was able to coordinate having traffic officers present at the rally, and we had hooked and towed 4 cars before the rally started. And the social media exploded, and there was no rally because they knew we were hooking cars and taking. So they don't want to bring their $30,000 or $40,000 car here to leave in a tow truck. So that we've been kind of lucky, but that was sort of a pre-planned event. I could get some strategies ready ahead of time and sort of intercept them and cause them grief quickly, and they never showed up. The ones that are happening now, they're really planning in more of a dark part of the web. And we're having a harder time knowing when they're going to happen. And often, at that point, if it's midnight, I might only have 2 traffic officers working, and they could be dealing with a bad car accident, a fatality. They will not be at a car rally.
They're just getting smarter, aren't they?
Yes, and yeah, everybody's thin right now.
Trying to keep up with them.
Yes.
One of the programs that is very strong in North Ajax is Neighbourhood Watch. I'm just wondering. We lost one of our heroes when she retired there. And I'm just wondering, is this one of the groups that you're working to sort of revive again? I think it's sort of gone dormant. I know that probably Ajax has one of the highest, or did at least before COVID, one of the highest areas for Neighbourhood Watch. Can you give me a status on how that is working with you?
Yes. So Ajax and Pickering actually have a strong neighborhood watch program, and it has virtually disappeared in most of the other communities. This came up in an regional-wide inspector call the other day, and we were actually talking with the Road Watch program and Crime Stoppers and Neighborhood Watch. And some communities don't have any of it anymore, where West Division actually seems to be a little stronger. So I guess the community is a little bit more engaged. So there's no anticipation of shutting it down or not participating in it. I don't know what other divisions are going to do, whether they're going to say, okay, that didn't work and we're going to move on to a different program. As long as ours continues to operate, we'll participate in it. And I'm grasping to think of the officers, the lady who retired.
Oh, Morgan.
Morgan, thank you.
Yeah,
Morgan, Morgan Dobbs, thank you very much, because she did it forever. And
is it Sarah Lynn Powers that took over for her?
That sounds right. And one of the things, is we're trying to now, I've spoken with the coordinator of the program, and they're trying to take it from a paper program to a computer program. So that's Sarah Lynn's investing a lot of her time, from my understanding right now, to sort of modernize the whole system as opposed to just having a handwritten sheet. So it's a transition. And I can certainly get a hold of the coordinator, you know, to get more specific information, but it's not dead by any means here. But it does seem to be in a bit of a lull in other areas.
Yeah, for various reasons, I'm sure. I have one last question and then a comment. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I apologize for taking so much time. Your predecessor, two back, Inspector Haskins, used to do a report for us, for council. Used to send it out on a monthly basis, which was very, very good for us to understand trends, traffic enforcement. Is there any way that we could have that report from you?
Yes.
I still have them, but
I'm familiar with what they are. So what was ended up happening was Chris Doney, our crime analyst, who spends a lot of time doing a lot of good work, was having to double up on his crime stats. So he would have crime stats that he prepares for me, and then he would do them for regional council, and they're a washed version. So information that might identify victims, crime scenes, whether it's an ongoing investigation, he would have to invest a significant amount of time washing that document before it goes to you. The next thing is consistently across the region, it wasn't happening at every division. So really what I did was I talked to the crime analyst, Chris Doney in particular, and about the value added of this right now. And it's one of the things where he's like, I can use my time better than creating a specific document. But we didn't let it stop there. The question was, is there a way to develop this regionally where each council gets the same type of information from each division to help them understand? So that's been sort of a negotiation. And again, the crime analyst, although Chris Doney reports to me, he works for the crime analyst through headquarters. But they want to try to present the same thing to each division consistently. So that's sort of the history behind that. You know, to take blame, I'm the reason that doesn't go out anymore. Do I disagree with sending them out? No, we'll do that. But I have to find a more efficient way to get the information out to you guys that's relevant to what you need, that doesn't compromise anything that we have ongoing. So it's that sort of balance right now. So I do apologize. I do know you're not getting that document. It's just finding the efficient way to get that information to you.
Okay. I guess my last comment is your last slide was about Pickering Casino. And I remember just a year ago, that was our entire focus. Yes. Well, at least it seemed like that was my entire focus. I just think how different the world is today. And I just want to thank you for continuing to keep our community safe and pivoting as much as you possibly can in a world that continues to seem to heap more and more responsibilities on you. And so I just want to thank you very much for coming out tonight and giving us your report. Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for your time.
Councillor Khan is next.
Thank you, Chair. I won't be too long. Thank you for all the great work you're doing, Inspector Martin and Sergeant Yamada. This is to do with the mosque on Harwood Avenue. So, you know, this is the holy month of Ramadan, and there's a lot of people who are going to the mosques. Last Thursday night, I drove around and I saw an officer's car was in the parking lot, and I pulled over and I spoke with him. And he was so nice and almost apologetic for being there. And I just wanted to clear the air because I know he was there and checking up on attendance and make sure everything was okay. But we do have I do have a very strong communication with the mosque, and I try to make sure that they're following, the ropes. But I just want to clear the air with your officers that with the spike of Islamophobia and the hate crimes, we are always happy to see officers in our compound. And even if they want to visit inside the mosque, that is easy. Like, we are grateful. We are worried for our families after all the mosque shootings and the hate crimes we experience as Muslims. So I just want you to know that we are always welcoming to your officers when they visit our mosques. So thank you for that. And please, and well, nobody's there anymore, but until it clears up again. But moving on to my quick question, on your slide for violent crime reduction strategy, there was a heading called community engagement. Can you speak a little on what that is again for me?
Sorry,
It was called compliance check. That's the one I was looking for.
certainly. So if you don't mind, I'd actually like to respond to your first comment. I'll bring up Kevin Yamada again. So you probably feel he should be replacing me here, but and that may happen soon enough. But one of the things that Kevin, again, because he's so involved, what's happening is he's so involved in the community. He's allowing me to focus on the division and the officers. He was able to bring a mom in and do a presentation last week, the platoons, about the significance of Ramadan. And we have been meeting with the platoon officers and telling them about the increased attendance and wanting to go to the parking lots. The reason being was for safety, because we have seen the escalation of violence. I hazard to guess that the officer didn't know what to say, and that he was afraid to say, "I'm here to make sure you're safe." I can only guess, but that was intentionally done by Kevin and myself to sort of increase our presence. And we had told the officers, if you go in that parking lot, people are going to come up and talk to you and say hi, because it's such a friendly community, and they're going to appreciate the fact that you're there. And then you went up and said hi, and I think you scared the officer. But it's certainly not there to check. Now, Harwood had complaints about attendance roughly a month ago. We had one of our OA officers go and check, and it was well within compliance, the percentages. Of course, we have to enforce the laws equally, but there was no issue of compliance. So there was intentionally a request for officers to be at parking lots. So that's what I'm glad to hear that. They just might not have known how to properly explain it to you. So,
No, not at all. I was really grateful because I tell you, my family, the Muslim families in Ajax are really appreciative of having the police presence. We feel protected. We do.
good.
Yes,
I'm so happy to hear that.
We pray and our backs are against the door. So, we're happy when we know there's protection around us.
Yes,
So-
we are there to support every member of the community, but we do understand that this is for certain diverse groups of the community. These are very challenging times, and we're very much aware of it because of my excellent partner. It just the media, right? Is that we're aware of it, and we were quite on top of this actually, as far as educating the platoon members and having them ready to be present. So to move on to your second question, sorry. Compliance checks, are you curious as to specifically what a compliance check is? Is that?
Yes.
Okay,
Just overall.
So there's, when we refer to a compliance check, it's a person who's under charge. They've been charged for a specific offense, and they've been released from custody, and they have certain rules that control their conduct when they're released. It's a little easier when it's local. So an impaired driver gets arrested by an officer. They're released, their car goes to car jail for 7 days, and they're not allowed to drive for, I believe, a month, whatever the prohibition is. That particular patrol officer will probably check on that house a couple times in the next couple shifts, just to make sure the person isn't breaching, so doing a compliance check. If you take that a little farther to say somebody who's charged on domestics or firearms charges, we want to be checking those people more frequently to make sure they're following the rules. What we're working on now is not just compliance checks inside our region and inside our division, but the folks that maybe do their criminal activity in Toronto, so they might be firearms or drug traffickers in Toronto, but they live in Ajax or they live in Pickering. They can be arrested and charged in Toronto and released on a series of very strict conditions in Ajax. That information doesn't get shared with us as easily as you would hope. And that's where our field intelligence officer is gathering that information from Toronto now, specifically for people who live in Ajax or Pickering, taking that information, and we're doing compliance checks on those people, which is a bit of a surprise for them. They're often going, well, how do you know my release conditions? I was released in Toronto or Peel or York. So those compliance checks are to ensure they're following the release conditions, and if they're not, they'll be charged and perhaps go to jail.
Thank you, Inspector. Thank you, Sergeant Yamada, and for your great work. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, sir.
Councillor Bauer.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, Inspector Martin and Staff Sergeant Yamada. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. Excellent update, great information. Really, really appreciate that. And of course, thank you for all the hard work that that
Thank
you do at DRPS. So I love that you had 211.ca as on your slide as a resource. Fantastic resource and very helpful and something quick and easy to remember. So I'm glad to see that you're using that and spreading that information. Thank you for that. And the Older Age Police Academy was brought up and mentioned. We attended that just before COVID, and it was a fantastic program. I hope it will come back, and whatever form it is, it will be. I'm sure it will be a big success. My question is regarding, you mentioned graffiti, and I receive pretty regular messages from residents who see or seem to think that there is an increase of graffiti markings across our town or in our ward. And it's becoming a concern in the sense that they're worried that these are taggings similar across, the town, and that they may be associated to gangs or criminal, that kind of stuff. So I'm just wondering if you can speak to that. Do you know anything about that, or does that seem like an issue?
My knowledge of tagging and graffiti, unfortunately, goes back to the 90s when I was in a street crime unit where we actually investigated that sort of stuff. So it's dated at very best. A lot of times people now are suggesting some of the graffiti is in fact artwork. Of course, you would disagree with it was painted all over your business. Some of it is arguably gang tags where you see the similar tag all over the place. The information typically is collected and forwarded to the intelligence unit. They'll gather information on that. They don't go often very far. We might get one of those lucky arrests where we catch somebody spray painting or tagging something, and it's a unique tag. And then we could see there's 7, 8, 10 other tags in the area, and we could charge them with a series of mischiefs. I think a lot of it, respectfully, is just the downtime the kids have right now. They just have a ton of downtime, and I think they have a lot of pent up frustration and anger, and it's coming out in different ways, whether it's mischiefs, theft from cars, spray painting, that everybody's kind of pent up. Not that I'm giving an excuse for that sort of behavior, but it wouldn't surprise me if there's an increase in that sort of criminal activity over the next little while.
Okay, thank you. I tend to agree with you that I think perhaps the increase is related to people looking for something to do and making not so smart choices. But I'm glad to hear that you don't think that there is, a problem with gangs in Ajax.
To talk more broadly about gangs, I think sort of a more junior entry level criminal activity for gangs is spray painting. And if that's the extent of their criminal activity, I can tolerate that. Obviously, the gang activity that's catching much more of our attention is the narcotics trafficking, involvement in human trafficking with young women at hotels, gun trafficking, all that sort of gang activity. Clearly, all of us agree that has to rise to the pinnacle of concern. But it could be suggested that sort of entry-level spray painting and that type of criminal activity leads to higher criminal activity. But our focus right now is on the higher level gang activity. And gangs do exist in Ajax and Pickering and Oshawa and through the entire region. That's, the loose affiliation of 3 or more people with a common criminal purpose is going to be a gang.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you very much for coming. Appreciate that.
Thank you. And that exhausts my speaking list. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming for your presentation. Very informative. 2 things. I don't have questions. One, if you're looking for more of those loud exhausts, you might want to check out the Audley Rec Center. I think just the burnout marks in the parking lots are pretty good evidence that that's a nice hangout for them. And Inspector, I do have your cell number. Thank you. And I try very hard not to abuse it. So.
Sir, we're both, and I'll have to get you Kevin's number because he solves more problems than me. So you can text him anytime you want. I'm just teasing. You're more than welcome to message me at any time. I think for the most part, I've messaged most of you at some point or another through phone or email. And it's our pleasure. We're here to help out, and we'll do whatever we can to assist.
All right. Thank you very much. Enjoy your evening, everybody.
All right. Thank you. We'll log off now. Thank you for your time.
Moving on to our next delegation, we have Proclamation Human Values Day. Manish Rugani, Walk for Values. Is Manish here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, there you are. Sir, when you're ready, please go ahead. You have 5 minutes.
Yep. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I'm kind of having internet issues, so if you don't mind, whoever the admin is, to give permission to Dr. Revati, and she'll be speaking on behalf of the Walk for Values team.
Mr. Clerk? There we go.
All right. Your Worship, Mayor Sean Collier and council members, good evening. My name is Revati Chinabatni. I'm the principal of Satyasai School of Toronto, Canada. The school has been existing for the last 20 years. And if you've noticed, it's ranked as one of the top schools, 10 schools in the entire province of Ontario. All right, here today, we are here and I bring greetings from the advisory committee as well as the steering committee of Walk for Values. All right, so I think listening to Inspector Martin, you all will agree that this is the appropriate time for us to revisit our human values and to build the communities of character. And thank you for giving us this platform to really talk about Walk for Values and Human Values Day. I appreciate you, Your Worship, and council members for proclaiming Human Values Day since 2015. Thank you for doing that. So since 2015, over 300 cities as well as municipalities across Canada have declared April 24th as Human Values Day. 4 provinces, British Columbia, Manitoba, Nova Scotia, and Newfoundland and Labrador have all declared April 24th as Human Values Day. Okay. So last year, because of COVID, we could not have the Walk for Values. Even this year, it's very unlikely that we will be having. Of course, we can only have virtual Walk for Values. However, we would like to donate, food to the food bank by raising, non-perishable food items from the community members. We were planning to do that, but because of the lockdown, we had to sort of defer it to next month. So I just want to give a brief history of Walk for Values. This was started in the year 2003 by the parent council members. They wanted to raise funds. Instead, the principal then decided that we all should come collectively as members of the community and to raise the bar, of our human values, transform ourselves to become better human beings as well as good citizens of the country. So what we do is on the human values, on the Walk for Values Day, we pledge a value. There are 5 human values which are universal across all religions. They are namely truth, right conduct, peace, love, and nonviolence. So students, members of the community, and everyone, whoever joins the Walk for Values, they will pledge a value to become a better human being. And of course, they adopt a value and then they practice it for the entire year for self-transformation. It can be either the value or the sub-value. So that's what basically it's done. So it started in 2003 with 3 grades. That's what we had: junior kindergarten, senior kindergarten, grade 1 in Malvern community that needed the values, especially with racial discrimination as well as drugs and other things. The school was the initiative. But over the years, the school started growing in its size. We have now from junior kindergarten to grade 8, and there's a demand to be extended to high school. We're just parked that idea right now. It's an independent school, not for profit. And we have students from different communities. We have members coming from Ajax as well as Whitby to our school because it's the only school of its kind. the motto of our school is to, provide human excellence as well as self-transformation. And how we do inculcate human values, human excellence is by balancing academic excellence with character development. So as I said, it was started by the Parent Council in the year 2003, and then the numbers started growing with 3,000 members in Malvern Society. And then we moved to downtown, started using Yonge and Dundas Square in 2007, and in 2013, the Nathan Phillips Square. So where different communities and all organizations that believed in these universal values became a part and parcel of the walk. It has been an amazing journey, of course, except for the last 2 years. So we do, when the Pan Am Games were going on, they were partners of the Walk for Values, and also declaring since 2015, as I said, 300 proclamations have been received from different cities and municipalities. And we also had the opportunity to sort of showcase the Human Values Day in the Niagara, as well as on the bulletin board in downtown. So I would appreciate, because you have proclaimed it in 2015, the Human Values Day, and you've been partners in that way. We really appreciate you, Mayor and council members. So the basic, we also did blood donation. Of course, that's not a possibility now under unprecedented conditions, but we have donated tons and tons of non-perishable food items to the food bank, Shoe Mountain, as well as planting the saplings to go green, as well as cleaning the communities. And of course, in 2010, the Member of Parliament, Michelle Simpson, declared the Satyasai School as the best kept secret in Scarborough. Okay, and she also made us all go to Ottawa Parliament, and she had a member statement given in 2010, which marked the 10th anniversary of the school and the 8th anniversary of the Walk for Values. So this year marks the 18th anniversary of the Walk for Values. And since 2015, we have been receiving the proclamations to declare the Human Values Day. If you have any questions or any clarifications, I'll be more than happy to.
Thank you. Any questions from members of council? Councillor Dice.
Not so much a question. I just wanted to thank you for the work that you do in your community in so many different ways. And it's really interesting about the human values. I think now in times of COVID, we are appreciating that more and more. And look forward to next year's successful walk, right?
Thank you so much. That's very, yeah.
I'll add one more thing for Councillor Khan. So Councillor Khan, we were actually planning to support one of the mosques in Ajax. That was our goal this year, to collect the food and donate to the mosque. So
yeah.
we'll still look forward for doing tree planting, and we look forward working with the mosque. So that was one of our goals. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If I may, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Councillor Khan.
Yes, we at the mosque, we do collect the food ourselves, but we take it to our Salvation Army in Ajax.
Okay.
So you can cut out the middleman and go directly to our Salvation Army.
Okay.
I'm sure they will appreciate it. But if you want to collaborate with us, I'm sure the community will appreciate collaborating with you as well. Whatever you choose. But thank you very much for thinking of us.
I appreciate it, and thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you. Anything further? Well, it is my pleasure to proclaim April 24th as Human Values Day, and that's presented on behalf of myself and council. So thank you for your delegation today.
Thank you so much.
Moving on, our next delegation, we have Ashley McWhirter, Proclamation Youth Week 2021. Ashley, whenever you're ready, please go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Collier, members of council, town staff, and Ajax residents. My name is Ashley McWhirter, and I'm the Community Recreation Supervisor for Youth Development in the town of Ajax. Tonight, I'm excited to share with you the value that the annual Youth Week activities has in celebrating our local youth and how we have pivoted this year's events to an online platform due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Youth Week is a provincial celebration of youth held annually during the first week of May. It is a fun, interactive celebration intended to build strong connections between young people and their communities. Youth Week profiles creativity, accomplishments, and diversity of youth. Youth often feel unrecognized for the valuable contributions they make to their communities and its social, economic, and civil landscape. Meaningful youth engagement through recreation emphasizes access, equity, and social justice and leads to positive youth development. National Youth Week reminds us of the valuable contributions that recreation and culture can make to youth development and that youth can make to their community. Each year, the town of Ajax celebrates Youth Week by offering free programs such as drop-in sports, cooking, professional development, and fitness workshops, prizes, Encourage Me Ajax, and partnerships with the library and local agencies. To ensure connections continue to happen during the COVID-19 pandemic, the town of Ajax is inviting youth to participate in a week of virtual events. The workshops, contests, and engagements have been influenced by youth from our Youth Engagement Advisory Committee to procure participation and interest. The events running this week include a creative self-portrait challenge happening on May 1st and 2nd, where youth are invited to submit an artistic and creative self-portrait in which all mediums are welcome. These images will be shared on our social media platforms and shared in our youth rooms once they are able to open up. On May 3rd, members from YAC will be hosting a Young Writers Workshop for youth to share literary pieces, discuss current trends in literature, and learn writing techniques. On May 4th, in partnership with the Ajax Public Library, youth yoga and a coding workshop will be offered. QuizWiz will be celebrating Youth Week with a special youth edition on May 5th with questions submitted by Ajax youth. Sterling, we hope to see you there. On May 6th, a resume building workshop will be offered through the Ajax Public Library, and the Mind and Body program that was once offered in our youth hubs will now be offered virtually in partnership with Girls Inc. The week will close with prize giveaways for participation and future leader profiles of some of the amazing youth in our communities that will be shared on social media. On behalf of all Ajax youth, I express my thanks for this opportunity and your gracious support in supporting and proclaiming Youth Week in Ajax. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from members of council? Councillor Lee.
I just want to confirm for the quiz week, it says Youth Week, right? Like I'm still allowed to participate, correct?
Yes, yeah. So it's still open to members of the public, but we had youth in the committee actually submit the questions. So there's going to be a special Youth Week edition round, so you can still play.
Okay, I don't want people crying. All right, I'm a grown man is still competing in this because I've been doing quite well every week, and it's no. All joking aside, I just want to say what a great job Rec and Culture is doing. Youth Week is a very important part of Ajax, and yes, we have to do it digitally this year, and that's not ideal. But I have no doubt that the Rec and Culture team will bring their best foot forward. So looking forward to it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any further questions? Seeing none. I just wonder, is Sterling the only one allowed in the quiz, or are we?
You are all invited. All the youth already know Sterling is going to be there. So yeah, we would love to see all of you there.
So would I.
Thank you for the presentation. Thank you for all your hard work with our young residents of Ajax. It's my pleasure to proclaim May 1st to 7th as Youth Week on behalf of myself and council this year. So please pass on our best regards to everybody.
I will. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Nice to see you.
Moving on to our last delegation, we have the Ontario Volunteer Service Award recipients by Sarah Moore, our Community and Accessibility Coordinator. Sarah, please go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you, Your Worship, and good evening, Mayor Collier and members of council. The town of Ajax strives to foster a vibrant and connected community from our strategic planning to the delivery of our programs and services. Volunteerism is one of the strengths of the town of Ajax. We engage our community through numerous volunteer opportunities and have developed a robust volunteer base of several hundred people from our community as a legacy of our participation from the Toronto 2015 Pan Am Games. Whether it be helping at a community event or providing formal feedback to council as an advisory committee member, the time, experience, knowledge, and consultation shared by our volunteers is invaluable to the town of Ajax. In my role as Committee and Accessibility Coordinator with the town, I have the privilege of working alongside the dedicated volunteer members of the town's advisory committees. And I can acknowledge firsthand the depth of commitment, passion, and expertise that they share with our town. It is fitting that I am in attendance this evening during National Volunteer Week, a week dedicated to the celebration of volunteers and their contributions, to invite you to join me in recognizing the long-standing volunteer commitment of 6 of the town's advisory committee members for their receipt of the 2020 Ontario Volunteer Service Award. This provincial award annually recognizes volunteers for providing committed and dedicated service to an organization over a period of time. I believe there are several volunteers still on the call this evening, so please join me in congratulating the following Town of Ajax volunteers, some of whom are present, on receipt of their 2020 Ontario Volunteer Service Award. For milestones in the year of 15 years, Catherine Smith from the Accessibility Advisory Committee. For the milestone of 10 years volunteer service, Beverly Briggs of the Heritage Advisory Committee. And Seppeline Dionorine for the Accessibility Advisory Committee. For reaching the milestone of 5 years of volunteer contribution, we would also like to acknowledge Barb Dowds, Donna Mullings, and Julia Stevenson, all of the Accessibility Advisory Committee. These individuals collectively, if you can believe it, have contributed 50 years of consultation and community engagement throughout their volunteerism with the town. It is this passion from our volunteers that truly demonstrates that Ajax is stronger together. I'd like to conclude the delegation this evening by sharing a fitting quotation from Margaret Mead. "Never forget that a small group of thoughtful, committed people can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has." A huge thank you to all of our Town of Ajax volunteers, and congratulations to the recipients of the 2020 Ontario Volunteer Service Award. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Moore, and thank you to all of our volunteers for everything you do in our community. We couldn't do everything without you, so really appreciate it. I saw Councillor Tyler Moran's hand up first.
Thank you, Your Worship. And thank you to all the volunteers that participated, even outside of this list. And I wanted to just draw Sarah Moore. When I was on Recreation and Culture, celebrated time on Recreation and Culture, you really helped me. You do a lot with these volunteer accessibility advisory and heritage. You do a lot of sort of bipping people into line, keeping everything straight. And I just want to thank you for that. A big reason why these things are happening right now and why they flow so well is because of your efforts. And I learned firsthand from you a lot of things. So thanks again for putting all that together, Sarah.
Thank you. It's very much appreciated.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Khan, you were next.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, thank you, Ms. Moore. Because of you, I spent the last 2 years on the Heritage Committee, and oh my goodness, these individuals are such hardworking, thoughtful, and kind people, and they deserve this more than anyone else. And now I've transitioned into the Heritage Advisory Committee, so now I get to meet Beverly Briggs. They are all such hardworking people and so deserving of it. But before, I want to make a point that Seppeline Dionorine is the mother of our poster boy and our star firefighter, Clive Dionorine. So I just want you guys to know that. So anyways, thank you very much. And thank you, Sarah, for pointing this out.
Oh, gosh.
Hi, Seppeline. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Bauer. Uh-oh.
I'm muted. There we go. Thank you, Chair. I do have a question. Thank you, Ms. Moore, for all your hard work. Congratulations to the winners and all the hardworking volunteers. Volunteering makes the world go round. So thank you for that commitment and passion. And my question is, for the volunteer recipients who are on the call, if they feel comfortable, would you please turn your camera on so we can see you? Only if you're comfortable. I see Cephaline.
Through the chair, I believe only a few are still on the call this evening, so you might not get too many on camera, but I believe Cephaline is with us, as well as Beverly may still be on the call.
Oh, nice. Okay, thank you. There. Oh, no. Okay. That was my question. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Anything further? Hearing and seeing none. Just once again, thank you everybody for all of your hard work. Very much appreciated.
Have a good evening.
I believe that wraps up our delegations. Moving on to items of correspondence, moved by Councillor Lee, second by Councillor Khan. The report dated April 19, 2021, containing items of correspondence be received for information. Are there any polls? Councillor Bauer?
Thank you, Chair. I would like to pull item 6 and item 20, both for endorsement. Unflawed Ontario call to action. You know, we have 4 of our council members who sit.
Hold on. Any other poll?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Councillor Dice.
Thank you. I'd like to pull number 5 and 22.
Perfect. Since 5 comes before 6, Councillor Dice, please go ahead.
I'm very eager tonight.
Actually, sorry. Before we go to that, so we pulled 5, 6, 20, and 21. On the balance is moved by Councillor Lee, second by Councillor Khan. Those in favor of receipt of those pieces of correspondence, please raise your hands if you're in favor.
I think it's item 22, Chair. You said 21.
20 and 22. On item number 5, Councillor Dice, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This piece of correspondence is from a motion that was supported at the region of Durham. And I just briefly wanted to speak to it, obviously because it's something that we support here in Ajax as well. So some people may have heard already that, you know, there was a proposal put forward many years ago up in York region on the, I think it's the West Holland River, to put a reclamation plant in. And it was about the time that here in Ajax, we were supporting tertiary treatment on the Duffins plant. And York was proposing a reclamation plant that would do just that with the best technology ever. With their new sewage plant, they would be removing the nutrients, nutrient loadings that were going into Simcoe. So it really was taking responsibility, as we all should do, with our sewage plants, and making sure that the water quality that is going back into the lake is pristine. And this was the top technology, state-of-the-art technology they were using. Recently, they were just waiting, I should say, from the province to make a decision on that environmental assessment, and the province has delayed that because they are now looking at possibly twinning the trunk, or the big sewer trunk, down from Finch Avenue and Pickering down to Duffins Creek, rather than put in the reclamation plant. So the region of Durham is saying that, you know, if this happens, that you know, they want all the best practices that were going to happen at the reclamation plant to happen at the Duffins Creek plant, to ensure that we also have that protection from nutrient loadings, that they would do some further studying on that. And like I said, we have been supporting that here in Ajax. And I just had a question to staff. I don't know if our director of planning can answer this, but I was wondering if you'd had any further updates. It's gone kind of quiet recently. We haven't had any updates. A decision I don't think has been made yet from the province, but I wonder if you have any further information on it.
Mr. Romanowski?
Yes, through the chair to Regional Councillor Dice. I don't have any recent updates. I know Mr. Richardson's on the call. If he has any information that maybe he's gotten towards the end of the week last week or today, I'd ask him to speak up.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Romanowski. I do not have any additional information and have not received any recently.
Well, I appreciate that. I didn't expect that I'm sure we would have heard any, so I didn't expect there would be anything new. I just wanted to be certain for this meeting because it does have implications for Ajax in that, you know, there is a proposed fourth expansion on the Duffins Creek plant. And if this twinning the trunk sewer south to the plant happens, it may mean that happens sooner than later. I think they had it for about 20 years out before they do their EA on that. So I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Anything further on this item? I had actually hoped that this would be pulled to be endorsed. Councillor Dyes, would you move that this be endorsed, please? You're muted.
Yep, no problem with that. Thank you.
Can I get a seconder, please? Second by Councillor Tyler Moran. I just want to speak to it very quickly. Councillor Dyes, you've done a great job at giving the overview. This amendment came forward after 3 referrals at the region, ridiculously enough, by our friends next door. And I just can't understand why anybody would accept that if the York sewage solution, or sorry, the Lake Simcoe sewage solution was changed to a Lake Ontario solution, why Durham residents should receive any less treatment and any less technology than would be used up in York. And so I was amazed that any member of regional council had a problem with this amendment and insisting. We've got Ajax council's taken a position opposing a Lake Ontario solution and supporting the Lake Simcoe. The region of Durham has taken the same position. The region of York has taken the same position. Nobody wants a Lake Ontario solution. The region of York has spent 10 years and $100 million on the environmental assessment on the Lake Simcoe solution. And now all of a sudden the province thinks it's a good idea to double twin the big pipe and bring it all down here and not put in the same environmental suite of protection that they're going to do up there. The most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. So I'm very glad to see this here, and I am very glad that this council hopefully is going to endorse this. I was contacted by a Star reporter earlier today asking if we'd heard any more information, and I told her no. I'm kind of glad. I do hope that this gets shelved. I do hope the province listens to all of the regions and municipal councils. I think even actually Pickering took the same position opposing a Lake Ontario solution. So let's hope they listen. I don't know why they would push this forward because the province isn't paying for it. Nobody said who's going to pay for it, but the province probably won't be paying for it, and we sure shouldn't be paying for York's waste. So let's just hope that they follow through on this 10 years and $100 million invested so far, and we don't have to worry about this. I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much. Anything further from anybody? Seeing no hands. Those in favor of endorsement? I see all hands. That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Councillor Bauer, moving on to item 6, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, you know, I always appreciate when we see items of correspondence that are from the region of Durham, because I appreciate that we have 4 members of council who sit on the region of Durham Council and who work very hard to represent Ajax and do what's right and the best interest of our town. So thank you to my colleagues. I thought this was very interesting. On Flood Ontario, I like that it's about engaging the public and educating the public about the impact of floods and the multiple benefits of natural infrastructure. That is all about spreading awareness and spreading that message, and it certainly impacts Ajax. So I thought this came from the region, supported by the region, so I thought that Ajax Council could also support it. So I ask for an endorsement, please, Mayor.
Move to endorse. Can we get a seconder, please? Seconded by Councillor Dyes. Anything further on this? I'll just point out, interestingly enough, through Great Lakes St. Lawrence Cities Initiative, the Plan 2014 and the International Joint Commission, the Lake Ontario levels have actually gone down. They've had the dam open in Cornwall, so they've actually now closed it again to start bringing the lake levels back up a little bit. So I look at that as progress regarding our flooding. So I decided to mention that. Those in favor of endorsement? I see all hands. That's carried. Moving on, item number 20, Councillor Bauer again.
Thank you, Chair. This is support for 988, 3-digit suicide and crisis prevention hotline. And really what struck me in the face was this line. Whereas the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic has increased the demand for suicide prevention services by 200%. We all know the mental stress and mental health and how this pandemic has made us feel and how important it is for supports. You know, Inspector Martin mentioned the use of 211, which is a wonderful service for communities, like information all gathered for community and social services. This is a federal initiative, I believe, for 988. I think it's a quick, simple, you know, it's aligned with the other numbers, the 911, for example. So I just think this is very important, and I would love for our council to endorse it.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak on this matter? No, pretty self-explanatory. Those in favor of endorsement? That is carried. Sorry, did I ask if there's a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Khan. Moved by Councillor Bauer, seconded by Councillor Khan. Thank you. That's carried. And moving finally to item 22, Councillor Dyes.
Thank you. This is correspondence from a resident with concerns expressed about the skate park and the outdoor basketball courts at the Ajax Community Center. As you know, there's the hospital is building a retirement home on the property. You've seen the work there. And they're going to have to displace one of their parking lots. As the town was going to do some work on these two, on the skateboard park and the outdoor basketball court anyway, they had to look at where we could accommodate the parking for the hospital, and that was one of the proposed areas. And I have to say that Lisa Bauer would have liked to have pulled this correspondence, that both of us were very concerned that we would be losing those facilities for young people and young adults through the summer, and how important it was during COVID, because it's very well utilized. And as we know, it really helps for mental health. It keeps them outdoors, and they're able to have some sort of support from their friends and some socialization, which is really important. We have met with staff on one occasion and had conversations on others about what the possibilities are for this. We've looked at many things that we can do, and I wonder if there's staff here that could speak to what the options were and what choices we may have or don't have on this.
Okay, I believe that's Mr. Meredith.
Through Mayor Collier to Regional Councillor Dyes, yes, there's been numerous conversations that have taken place over the last couple of months, and sort of leading up to the recommendation for the basketball court and the skateboard park. There were a number of options that were explored in the vicinity of the Ajax Community Center as it related to temporary parking. And from a staff perspective, it's somewhat tied to where we expect the town to be from a reopening standpoint as it relates to hopefully a positive response to vaccines and sort of a post-pandemic scenario as we get into the fall of 2021 and into the 2022 season. So understanding that, you know, this project was going to cover 2 seasons in 2021 and 22, we did not want to make a long-term commitment as it relates to the ACC parking lot as a sort of a permanent solution while construction is happening within the hospital limits. So it was really sort of working backwards from, a September timeframe, protecting the town's interests as it relates to the reopening and the programming of the Ajax Community Center, whether it includes hockey, fitness facilities, rentals, and so forth. So ensuring that we had the ability to maintain the day-to-day operations of the town sort of longer term, we really wanted to ensure that we had an alternate location where we could accommodate the parking for the hospital construction. And obviously we're somewhat limited geographically. So that was the scenario that we then explored as it relates to the existing basketball court and skateboard park. And knowing that there was a funding application that ultimately was going to look at the replacement of that infrastructure within the next couple of years. So initially the plan was to essentially start and remove the basketball and skateboard infrastructure sooner than later and have the hospital parking employees sort of work or parking in that temporary location. But as a follow-up to conversations that staff had with regional councillor Dyes and local councillor Bauer, we were asked to see, how long we could potentially extend retaining and keeping the basketball and skateboard park in operation. So when we worked back, spoke to the hospital staff and looked at and worked back from a sort of a September scenario, and as it relates to protecting the town's interest, we felt that we could, at a minimum, keep the basketball and skateboard park open until the end of July. And then at that point in time, or as we approached that point in time, we'll continue to monitor. And there's obviously, depending on where we're at that point in time, the ability to extend that time frame. But the scenario right now is, again, thinking somewhat positively as September is on the horizon, and whether or not we're even remotely back to normal or not, the thought was it's about a 2 to 3 week period in time that the hospital requires to actually remove and construct the temporary parking lot. So essentially, we're looking at the path of potentially handing that site over to them August 1st, which would result in the removal of that infrastructure and the construction of the parking lot to be in effect prior to Labor Day, so that if in the event that we were back to fully programming the Ajax Community Center, that we had full access to the parking lot. Should that not be the case and we have the ability to extend, then that's something we're going to continue to monitor. But that's sort of the scenario that's presented and what's been discussed to date, and the plan in which staff are proceeding as far as the agreements with the hospital.
So just to follow up on that, the time frame will probably be 2 seasons. So almost 2 years that this will be utilized as a parking lot.
We would expect it to, we don't know definitive timelines in 2022 when it would be completed and they would sort of restore that site. But it also gives us an opportunity through 2021 for council to consider the Recreation and Park Master Plan, and the Ajax Community Center as a whole will be looked at as part of that process, and how we recapture those amenities within that facility. So there is a tie-in longer term as far as what the ultimate solution is as well. My thoughts is that it will be improved infrastructure that we're looking at longer term at the ACC to benefit the existing residents in the vicinity, plus the new residents that we'll be receiving over the next 10 to 20 years as the town intensifies within the downtown area as well.
So by an improvement, you mean a relocation of the facility?
That's an option, right? I don't want to get too far ahead of the process. So we will be looking at a range of options as we look at the potential of the Ajax Community Center longer term.
Well, I appreciate the update. I think I'm very disappointed that we've been asked to do this. I think that it was something they should have thought of ahead of time, and we would have had more time to maybe make alternate arrangements. I think that's, in my opinion, just something that comes out of an MZO when it doesn't go through a proper planning process and these kind of things pop up. But really, you know, while the retirement facility is great, it's putting, you know, it's setting aside these two really important pieces of infrastructure for, like I say, the youth and young adults who are using it all the time, particularly now in COVID. I think it's so critical. So whatever you can do and keep us up to date on maybe, you know, extending the timeline and getting this thing moved sooner than later, or finding a different location would be great. I think it needs to be done very quickly. And I appreciate the work you've done on it. And I know we're all frustrated by this. And I do appreciate the letter that was sent in, because basically it says all the things that Lisa and I have already expressed. So thank you, Mr. Montgomery, for your letter. And thank you for the update.
Thank you. So Councillor Dye, so you just moved that this be received?
Yes, please.
Councillor Bauer, will you second? Okay, those in favor of receipt? Any opposed? That's carried. Thank you. That concludes our items of correspondence. Moving on to reports. We have moved by Councillor Crawford, second by Councillor Lee, the Community Affairs and Planning Committee report dated April 6, 2021 be adopted. Any questions or comments on the last CAP meeting? Councillor Lee?
Thank you, Chair. Wasn't there something we had to ratify today from our CAP meeting? Is that still, it was the PCOV land that, was that ultimately settled? I thought we had to settle that today.
No, I believe we did not defer it. You're talking about the GGC report, I think, on the security versus.
No. I'm talking about the one with the PCOVs and the other landowner on Kingston Road. And I thought we had deferred it. Clerk, am I incorrect there? If so, just let me know. I thought there was a deferment.
No, I think you moved to defer it, and it was not. It was,
that would be exactly what I'm talking about then. Clerk, are you going to confirm what the mayor just said? Correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. My bad. I thought we had punted it, but okay. Thank you. No questions.
No, it is on the floor to be ratified tonight. I do know that a meeting was held between regional staff, Ajax staff, and the proponents for both developers last Tuesday. I was told it was a productive meeting, and hopefully both sides are still talking.
Got it.
But I suppose we will see in the next 20 days after we ratify this. So, or 30 days. Anything further on the CAP report? Okay, those in favor? I see all hands. That's carried. Moving on to the General Government Committee report, moved by Councillor Tyler Moore and seconded by Councillor Khan. The General Government Committee report dated April 12, 2021 be adopted. Questions or comments on GGC? Hearing none, those in favor of adoption? I see all hands. It's carried. And the summary of advisory committee activities, moved by Councillor Lee, second by Councillor Dyes, that the summary of advisory committee activities report dated April 19, 2021, as attached to the meeting agenda, be received for information, and that the recommendations contained therein be referred to staff where applicable. Any questions or comments on the summary of advisory committee reports? Councillor Dyes?
I have a question on the Fuller Road report. Basically,
that's next.
Okay, sorry. I jumped the gun. I thought you'd done.
That's okay. Anything on the advisory committee? Being none, those in favor of receipt? Any opposed? No, that's carried. Fuller Road reconstruction, moved by Councillor Bauer, second by Councillor Dice, that council award the contract for Fuller Road reconstruction to Marking Construction Company Limited for 2.477 million and change inclusive of taxes, and that staff award the contract for contract administration, Fuller Road reconstruction, to the Municipal Infrastructure Group Limited in the amount of $185,303 inclusive of taxes. Councillor Dice, your question.
Thanks. Sorry about that. I was reading ahead. Just to staff, in the report, it says it doesn't have any existing pedestrian or cycling facilities. So I'm curious to know if there'll be anything for cycling put in there when you resurface the road, because I noticed that there are a lot of bicycles going through that area.
Is that Mr. Meredith?
Yes, it is. Sorry, just trying to find my button there. So there will, there's not a formal cycling facility as it relates to active transportation, but there will be a sidewalk constructed along Fuller. There's currently no sidewalk now. So in terms of pedestrian access, there will be improvements made by the addition of a sidewalk.
So will you be doing anything like share the road symbols or anything like that? Because there are a lot of people who ride to work in that area and also on the bus and bring their bikes.
It's something I can have follow-up conversations with Supervisor of Transportation, Mr. Grieve, to confirm if that's an option or not.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further on this? I'm wondering, Councillor Dies, if that would perhaps require an amendment, a number 3, that basically staff look into on-road cycling infrastructure and report back.
I think it's just a referral to staff to come back with the information and look at the options.
Okay.
Okay, with that, thank you.
That's fine. Anything further on this? Okay, hearing seeing none. Those in favor? Any opposed? No, that's carried. Departmental reports, Municipal Fire Protection Grant 2021, moved by Councillor Lee, second by Councillor Bauer. The council authorized staff to enter into a formal agreement with the Office of the Fire Marshal and Emergency Management to receive funding of $34,100 towards enhancing the town's virtual service offerings and training opportunities as a result of COVID-19. I don't think anybody has a problem receiving grants, but any questions or comments on this? Hearing, seeing none. Those in favor of the report? That's carried. Thank you. Departmental reports, contract award, uniform security guard services, supplemental information report. That the report entitled Contract Award Uniform, moved by Councillor Crawford, second by Councillor Lee, that the report entitled Contract Award Uniform Security Guard Services Supplemental Information Report be received for information. Any questions or comments on the supplemental report? Seeing none, I had some questions, but the more I've thought about it, I'm not going to do any action. This goes to some of the questions that were asked to police for enforcement earlier as well, and it's a challenge. I guess I'll just speak to it for the public that I think have expectations of our security guards and of our bylaw officers that are perhaps not realistic with regards to their enforcement. So I would just recommend that members of the public read these reports, hopefully that it gives a lot of good information on what they can and cannot do and what their duties are. And ultimately, a lot of the enforcement does have to fall on DRPS, as we heard earlier, and even they have to take a more educational approach. So thank you, staff, for this report. You've answered a lot of my questions. Appreciate it. Anything further on receipt of the report? Okay, those in favor? That report is received. And now on the item from General Government Committee that was referred to staff, The Uniform Security Guard Services referred from the April 12th GGC meeting, moved by Councillor Crawford, second by Councillor Tyler Moran. The council award the contract for Uniform Security Guard Services to Paragon Protection Limited in the estimated amount of $357,811, inclusive of taxes, for 1 year. And the council authorized staff to renew the contract for additional 2 one-year periods pending an analysis and satisfactory performance review at the anniversary date. Anything further on this? Hearing, seeing none, those in favor of the recommendation? None opposed, that's carried. Regional Council reports. Councillor Crawford.
I think my only comment, no report, was that I don't think I've been in a COW meeting or any regional council meeting that only lasted half an hour. It was like groundbreaking last week, 2 weeks ago, and even Works was a half an hour long. So there really was nothing that I saw to report.
It's been refreshing given some of our 15 and 14-hour meetings that we've, I think, become used to. Anything from Councillor Dawes, Councillor Lee? No, I'll just report quickly on a transit because it relates to the vaccine rollout. Ontario Power Generation generously donated $10,000 to Durham Regional Transit for transportation to get people to the vaccination clinics. So anybody needing to get to the vaccination clinic, you can use the Durham Regional Transit on-demand app or call the number. They will pick you up at the closest bus stop to your house and take you to the vaccination, any of the 8 vaccination clinics in the region of Durham, and return you back. And normally it would be regular fares apply, but thanks to the generosity of Ontario Power Generation, that $10,000 will cover the costs up until that runs out. So we're very appreciative of that. I'll just speak quickly as well. One thing that I actually ran on and that I've been pushing for quite a long time was a new student pass. So starting in September, there will be a new reduced fare student pass. The difference between this and the old student pass was a restricted student pass. And it was about $52, I think. And students could only use it up until 7 p.m. Mondays to Fridays, where this new student pass would be open all the time. So it's not restricted. And the price is going to be, I believe, $53, down from $93. So a $40 saving per month for students to take Durham Regional Transit to get to school and back. So I'm very glad to see that happen, and that came through at the last meeting, and it's something that I think we're all happy to see and have been wanting for quite some time. So we finally got it done. Any questions on Regional Council reports? Hearing, seeing none, we have moved by Councillor Dawes, second by Councillor Crawford, that the Regional Council reports of April 19, 2021 be received for information. Those in favor? I see none. I see all hands, so that's unopposed. That's carried. Moving on to motions. We have 3 motions in front of us. We have the first motion on stopping Asian hate. Councillor Bauer, please go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, I think Councillor Bauer may have temporarily dropped.
Let's move on to the next one and hopefully she'll reconnect. Let's move on to removing 412 and 418 tolls. Councillor Tyler Moran and Councillor Khan, please go ahead with your motion.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you to my council colleagues, our council colleagues, for considering this. You know, as much as one of these no-brainer motions, I think it was important for our council to, within this term, just come out and speak to it. We campaigned on it. I know we did here in Ward 1, talking about how Lake Ridge, I'm talking about December, November 2019, and trying to sort of get this right before we get back to normal, whatever that means. But the traffic on Lake Ridge would be packed. Nobody's on the 412, nobody's on the 418. I'm assuming everybody listening understands it's the highway between 401 going up to the 407, and there's a toll for it. And the tolls are not
inexpensive. It actually costs, I think, about $10 just to drive. I'm not exactly sure. But we know that Highway 410, we know that Highway 427, DVP 404 in the west is all, there's no toll charges in that. And for some reason, there's a toll charge here. But I understand Councillor Khan can speak to what the province has done, which is positive. But we'd like to go all the way at some point and remove those tolls, because in my opinion, and I think I'm paraphrasing what the mayor said before, I think there'll be enough, if there's more people on the 412 and 418, there'll be cars trickling onto the 407. So as far as losing money, I think it'd be a good advocate for 407. Anyway, I hope I can get council approval on this. Obviously, the province has autonomy over this, but I would like this council to weigh in on it and just show our support for removing the 412 and 418. Yeah, the tolls. So I'll leave it at that for now, but that's what I'm asking to do. And hopefully our provincial partners are listening, and we can get this done one day. Thank you.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Mayor.
Councillor Khan, did you wish to speak to this as a seconder?
Thank you, Chair. After Councillor Tyler Moore and I discussed this, I spoke to MPP Phillips in depth about this, and I asked him what we can do to represent Ajax. And we spoke, and he told me about, what we can do is freeze the tolls, and he's going to work on behalf of Ajax at Queen's Park and get it done. Lo and behold, a couple of weeks after, he called me and says, listen, I might get this done before you get your motion to council, because the tolls increase every May. The May of every year, the toll increases. So you had to get it done before, for this month in April. So it's frozen for this year, May, and next year, May. So that the pleasing part to hear about that is that's going to save taxpayers and Durham residents over $500,000 in tolls and money saved in their pockets. So we're pleased about that. And I know MPP Co had made a commitment to do his best to try and remove these tolls. And I wish him all the luck in the world. And he has our support. So thank you, Councillor Tyler Moore, and for working with me with this. And we do look forward to your support, colleagues. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Lee?
Thank you, Chair. I just think if the Durham Region MPPs wanted to, they could, we have quite a few Durham Region MPPs who this affects the majority of their constituents. And this is not partisanship. This is just everybody wants those tolls gone in Durham Region. Not every highway is tolled. Yeah, for some reason, the 412 and the 418 are. Just for context, to go from Taunton to the 401, it's about 6 kilometers at 8.9 cents. That's $5.40. Round trip, that is $10.80 per day if you want to go from Taunton to the 401 on the 412. I could literally go from Buffalo to Pennsylvania across New York State for less than that. And that's it's, listen, I get like certain tolls have been there longer, but especially with, they want to build another highway across Barrie or whatever the new plan is. Durham Region residents have shouldered this unnecessarily for a very long time. And I don't think we should anymore. And that's why I absolutely support this of removing the tolls. But listen, maybe it's going to be an election campaign surprise next year, in which case, amazing. We're all going to be very happy. But I speak unequivocally right now that, north-south traffic to the highways are, even with COVID, have been pretty burdensome. And this would absolutely alleviate a lot of those traffic concerns. So I thank Councillor Tyler Moore and Khan for bringing this forward. I thought we did, to be honest, but we actually did this at the region and we didn't do this locally. So about time, and I just really hope the MPPs are listening, because this is very much a solvable, very easy win for everybody. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Anything further? I'll just add very quickly, just the, discrepancy between every other north-south connector, 400 series highway, 404, 410, all the rest do not have tolls, yet the residents of Durham are held to a different standard and have tolls on those connectors, which is ridiculous. And I'm big on making things up in volume. To me, this is a lost leader. You get rid of tolls on the 412 and the 418, more people will take it, and it'll increase, they'll make more money on the 407. I mean, it's just easy. It's easy economics, but that's all I'll say about that. I think this is a no-brainer. I'm happy to support. Anything further by any member council? Hearing, seeing none. Those in favor of the motion? That's carried. Thank you. Councillor Bauer, you are back. Are you ready to proceed with your motion on stopping Asian hate? We had to skip over it while you were having some technical difficulties. You're muted. Please go ahead.
Okay, I'm so sorry. I do apologize. I'm on my cell phone right now. My computers are frozen, and I'll just do my best. And thank you for waiting for me to come back. So yes, this motion is very personal to me. I want to thank my colleague, Regional Councillor Lee, for having the discussion with me about making a statement about something that is real. And I want to thank my colleagues who supported us when it was a statement. And then again, everyone who supported us when it, well, hopefully when it comes out as a motion tonight. So, you know, I have felt this, and I am appreciative of the reminder from Councillor Lee that we are elected officials who have a platform and have a voice. Because when I felt this growing up, I didn't have that platform or that voice. So, you know, I felt it as a child, being called atrocious racist names and not knowing what to do about that. You know, I felt it when I had my first full-time job, and it was muttered to me that I stole that job. It was given to me because I was a visible minority or a woman. And it made me doubt that I deserved it and that I earned it, and that I had to work extra hard to prove to those people that I earned it. And I sure did, I'll tell you that. You know, I felt it when I had children and took my babies to the park, and how many times where I was mistaken for the Filipino nanny instead of their mother. Pre-pandemic, my sisters and I going on a trip to go visit our aunt in Florida, my blonde hair, blue-eyed aunt from Nova Scotia, and sitting at the pool at the resort, and she's introducing us to her neighbors and friends there. And a woman looking at us up and down, then looking at my aunt and saying, "Do they speak English?" And even when Councillor Lee and I had the courage to come out with this statement, to have mutterings that I was the wrong kind of Asian, because my family's from the Philippines, and that doesn't equate. So, and I think I'll just make one more comment where I felt it, where I feel it, is my 79-year-old father, that I worry about him, that maybe one day someone's going to mistake him for, I won't even say mistake him, maybe someone is going to act hateful because of the way that he looks or where they think he might come from. So we had a great presentation tonight from the police, who confirmed that, you know, there is hate crime and unreported hate crimes. So I want to thank my colleagues for allowing me to have the opportunity to use my voice in this way. And I want to ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lee is the seconder. Do you wish to speak to this? Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. And you'll excuse me if I go a bit over my time. But yeah, on this especially, I got a lot of things to get off my chest, you know? So I wanted to prepare today, anything I said today, with just history. And so let's go back into the history, into the late 19th century, where Chinese immigrants came to Canada to work as railway workers to construct the Canadian Pacific Railway, which joined East Canada or North, you know, East Canada to West Canada, and then to work in the mines, because those were the only jobs available to them. 1885, John A. Macdonald appoints the Royal Commission on Chinese Immigration, which recommended a $10 tax. And then there's the Chinese Immigration Act of 1885, which imposes a much harsher $50 tax on Chinese immigrants. And historically, it becomes the first piece of legislation in Canadian history to exclude immigrants on the basis of their ethnic origin. We're not done. In the 1900s, that head tax was raised by Wilfrid Laurier to $100, and in 1903 to $500, which in today's value is $13,000, with people who had the lowest paid jobs. We'll go on to the Chinese Immigration Act of 1923, passed by the Parliament of Canada, which outright prohibited the Chinese from immigrating at all. This included ethnic Chinese with British nationality, people from Hong Kong, for example. And this wasn't repealed until 1947, with the first real elimination of restrictions based on nation origins not happening until 1962. We're not even 60 years cleared from this. And of course, one of our largest national shames, in 1942, Japanese Canadians living in BC were forced from their homes and sent to internment camps. The Canadian government, they seized and sold their property. And even after the war, many of them were deported. What's the point here? Well, anti-Asian racism is just as old as this country, and that's a sad thing to say out loud. And ultimately, as Councillor Bauer alluded to, we've had so many discussions about this. And you know, you think you're the only one who goes through this, and then you speak and it's just like, oh no. And this racism, it takes so many different forms. Like Councillor Bauer said, opportunities that all of a sudden we didn't earn the same way anyone else did, or opportunities that just pass us by. Stereotypes made at our expense because of our skin color. Jokes that have been shared all in the name of fun, but they're not just jokes. They're a perpetuation of intolerance. And listen, at the end of the day, we're not being overly sensitive calling it out. It's not being PC, you know, politically correct. Oh, I can't make jokes anymore. Asians across this town, this province, this country, they're being physically and verbally assaulted, not for anything we did, but the way we look. And that's overt racism. Sometimes it's way more passive because of the way I speak. I've had people say to me, and this is pretty recently, "You're not even Asian, Sterling. Don't worry about it." As if that's some compliment to be given because I don't have the same accent my grandparents had when they immigrated here, or my parents had. We've been tokenized as beacons of diversity by the same people that didn't care to share our message in the first place. Concepts of diversity, inclusion, equality, these terms have been thrown around so much, they're beginning to lose all meaning, whether it's from anti-Black racism, anything else. We've taken firm stance, like again, anti-Black racism, Islamophobia, crimes against our First Nations population, anti-Semitism, homophobia, transphobia. This motion today, it's going to pass. I have the utmost confidence it's going to pass, but it's important, just like before, that we name the problem as a first step of addressing these underlying issues. Because as a town, as a region, as a province, as a country, we need to continue to highlight these disturbing trends and say as leaders that hate-motivated attacks have to stop. Like I said, it's not political correctness. It's a commitment from all of us as leaders in our community to do better. We heard it from Inspector Martin, who said that, yeah, we've unfortunately gone from, you know, religious crimes to race crimes. And unfortunately, we've seen an increase of anti-Asian hate crimes. And so I'm just going to finish by saying, anybody who's watching and you feel you've been a victim of hate, Craig, stand up and report it to the authorities. At the end of the day, you know, we all see you, we all hear you. And I truly hope, whether it's Asian, Black, anybody who's been persecuted for just being who you are, that we're going to persevere together through this continued vigilance. So thank you, council colleagues, for listening. Thank you, Councillor Bauer, for putting this forward. And this has got to stop. And I really hope this is just the first step towards that. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And thank you both for those very heartfelt words. And we're having a lot more of these conversations and we're learning a lot more. And we just, as a council, started down the road of our diversity training, and we just had our unconscious bias module just last week. So I think it's really good to have things like this come forward. I think it's really good for us to be having these conversations. And I think everybody can agree that any type of racism or discrimination for anybody is just not acceptable anymore. And we really need to be addressing this and moving forward. Does any member of council wish to speak on this? Councillor Khan?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Bauer, Regional Councillor Lee, for bringing this forward. Everybody knows that I'm from Guyana and I fly that flag very proud. And we're a country of 6 races, and Chinese being a very prominent race. And I want to make it clear that this is a very, very serious problem in Canada. I have childhood friends. I have a friend who was a Chinese doctor, and she serves at a clinic in Ajax, and she wears a hijab. So I don't know which one is worse for her patients, if she wears a hijab or because she's Chinese. But she's abused on a daily basis for those two things. So I hope this motion actually brings some action, and it's not just words. And I hope to see something of good fruition come out of this. So thank you for letting me voice this, and thank you. I'm very proud of my colleagues for bringing this forward, and you do have my support. And thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Anything further? I'm pretty sure this is going to be unanimous. Those in favor?
Actually, Chair, let's get a recorded vote for this. I do want this, if that's okay.
Recorded vote, please, Mr. Clerk.
Thank you.
Thank you. On the motion before council, please state your position in favor or opposed. Regional Councillor Lee.
In favor.
Councillor Bauer.
I think she dropped off.
We'll cycle back. Regional Councillor Crawford.
In favor.
Regional Councillor Dyes.
In favor.
Councillor Khan.
In favor.
Councillor Tyler Morin.
In favor.
Councillor Bauer.
In favor.
Mayor Collier.
In favor. And that carries unanimously. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Councillor Lee, next motion is yours. Corporate greenhouse gas emissions. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. This one's a more positive one. So I've brought this up the past few meetings, and when we declared the climate emergency, and I think it was late 2018, if not early 2019, I kept being told that we had hit our targets such a long time ago that after our current environmental coordinator had left, we didn't actually follow up, but we were just confident that we had just kept through our targets. And climate's going to be an issue that's never going to go away in our respective lifetimes. And I hope it's something that we can hopefully course correct for future generations. But it really just starts with setting goals for ourselves, setting targets for ourselves. The targets set were not pulled out of a hat. They're very much in line, if you saw the correspondence, with the region's targets. And they set community targets and corporate targets. And I've spoken with our current environmental coordinator, Cameron Richardson. I spoke with Dave Meredith from operations. I spoke with Jeff Romanowski from planning. Everything is very much achievable. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be without sacrifice as a municipality, but ultimately we're working towards a very common goal, like the most common goal, I would argue. The one thing, I'm going to read the resolution at the end, if I may. So now therefore be resolved that Ajax Council reaffirm its commitment to the environment by proactively mitigating and adapting to climate change impacts. 2, Ajax Council establish the following corporate GHG emission targets, and that these targets be reflected in the upcoming corporate climate change action plan update. 20% GHG emissions reduction by 2025 below 2019 levels, 40% GHG emission reduction by 2030 below 2019 levels, 100% GHG emissions reduction by 2050 below 2019 levels. 3, Ajax Council endorse Region Durham's community GHG emission reduction targets, 10% by 2025, 30% by 2030, 100% by 2050. The last one is one I really want to bring attention to, that staff be directed to examine the feasibility of creating a climate reserve fund, including investigating and assessing how funds for this reserve could be identified and allocated, and to report back to the appropriate standing committee of council with the recommendations. And ultimately, the vision behind this is, why don't we just take 1, 2, 5% of every project going forward in the town and put it to an environmental reserve? Yes, it's very easy for me to say that, which is why we're asking staff to look into this. But I just know going forward, we're seeing it now where the province will have funding, the feds will have funding, as long as we have quote unquote matching funds. This will ensure that we'll have those funds ready to go for all these environmental projects. We know we're coming, whether it's from the province or from the feds. So it's incredibly important, this document, because it really sets the tone for the next 29 years, long after any of us will probably still be on council, but hopefully it'll paint a better tomorrow, not just for our residents, but for the entire earth. So I would definitely appreciate council support on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Crawford, I did see your hand, but I'm going to give Councillor Dyes the opportunity as the seconder first, if you wish to speak to it, Councillor Dyes.
Yes, thank you very much. So this is something that doesn't discriminate because it is worldwide and we've been talking about it for years and years. We're really getting to a point where we have to do something very quickly to mitigate, the costs of not just cost, but the health impacts of climate change and the greenhouse gas emissions. I also have a question. I don't know if Mr. Romanowski or Mr. Richardson can answer, but it occurred to me looking at this when we were talking about emissions, that there's a lot of concern in the community regarding the number of warehouses that are popping up in our community in the region and the impact that has on our overall air quality and our overall health. Now, I know when we go through a development application, there are certain reports that they have to do. And I know a traffic study is one of them, but I've never seen any traffic study that included the types of vehicles that we're seeing on our roads. So is mostly cars, are they electric, are they gas, or are they how many trucks, that kind of thing. And I wondered if there's any way that we can sort of, through our planning process, have that kind of information come forward to us.
Mr. Richardson?
I could take this, Mr. Mayor, and respond to Regional Councillor Dyes. I haven't seen traffic studies get specific as to, whether it's gas vehicles, electric vehicles, hybrids. We're usually dealing with passenger vehicles of some sort, and obviously the vehicles that are associated with the development. So in the case of a warehouse or a distribution center, obviously truck traffic, but there's nothing in those studies that speak to emissions. Definitely something that, through the endorsement of this motion, we can start looking at how to measure that. I don't know if that's something we could ask for in those studies though either, because a lot of the models that are used in traffic studies are models. So they're not factoring in certain percentages of trips based off of, electric, hybrid, or gas-powered vehicles. We may see a shift in that in the future as, hopefully the balance shifts more towards electric and hybrid vehicles as opposed to fossil fuel consuming vehicles. But there's nothing prescriptive in the Planning Act that speaks to that, nor do our policies in our official plan or other official plans speak to that kind of more granular breakdown of those types of trips. But that's something that we can keep in mind and keep asking through our pre-consultation meetings, and push the bar that way through more of our formal discussions with applicants and whatnot to kind of get a better idea of what those impacts are, because we are environment focused development, especially with our policies that are in place in our official plan that are well positioned, and developers are aware of our green initiatives and other green development standards, which we're working on guidelines to enhance. But we have a lot of green and environmentally friendly policies in our OP that help guide us that way. So we can definitely have those conversations to see if we can gather that information to help support this motion in the coming years.
Well, thank you. And I appreciate that. I think it really needs to be looked at. I mean, here we are setting very aggressive targets, and then we have industries that are going to set those targets back. So it's how we deal with that. And even with, there's the carbon tax. Everybody hates the name of the carbon tax. However, that might be something that comes into play with different industries that have a lot of trucks or a lot of vehicles on the road. I don't know, but I think it's worth a conversation. I think it will help us understand how we're going to get there you know, much easier than just looking at numbers if we can actually address some of those emerging issues. I don't know if they've been taken into consideration when these are done, when these numbers are put out there. So
Definitely.
I appreciate it.
No problem. And I didn't want to leave Mr. Richardson out of the conversation if there was something that he wanted to add.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Romanowski. Through the chair to you, Regional Councillor Dyes. Just in addition to what Director Romanowski mentioned, industries like warehouses are included within the community emissions. So Ajax has endorsed the Durham Region's Community Energy Plan, which speaks to some programs and identifies available funding for things like deep energy retrofits on groups of buildings. So whether they're schools or warehouses or different types of industry. And in terms of corporate reduction targets, industry would not fall under our corporate targets. The green standard design guidelines that Director Romanowski spoke to can encourage EV infrastructure on site during proposals. And that wouldn't necessarily just be for the trucks at warehouses, but also for staff and employees if they have EV vehicles that they're taking to site every day. And that may address, in terms of their staff emissions as well, that may address some issues with air quality. But it's also important to stress that replacing every gas vehicle with an electric vehicle is not really an answer to mitigating and adapting to climate change. We really do need to reduce traffic and transportation and really invest in mass transportation and public transit.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It just reminded me having EVs in the parking lots must give us some idea also, or will down the road, of how many vehicles are coming online. I know it won't be total replacement anytime soon, and there'll be something new come along. But again, it helps give us an idea of what the options are. And while I have you here too, I just wanted to direct a question to you as well on what you're thinking of for setting some kind of a climate reserve fund. It's in number 4 in the motion here. Is that the same as what I would call natural capital, or is it strictly sort of a mitigation tool?
Through Mayor Collier to you, Regional Councillor Dyes. It depends. We could investigate different projects and identify what types of projects could be funded by a climate reserve fund. So for example, at the region of Durham with their reserve fund, they laid out right at the beginning several different types of projects, whether they're energy retrofits, a zero emissions vehicle campaign, natural infrastructure and tree planting. You could earmark portions of that reserve fund for whatever types of mitigation and or adaptation projects you would like to implement. So I think that would be during the investigation and the feasibility study of such a reserve fund. I think that would be something that we could look at that time. And knowing obviously when funding opportunities, especially ones that require matching funding, arise, that we need to be fluid and jump on those opportunities, because sometimes the application process is a very quick process and deadlines are fast approaching. So we need to be able to jump at those opportunities when they arise. And we can see at different times and seasons, there may be different projects that are being funded. So right now we're definitely seeing a lot of zero emission vehicle infrastructure, marketing campaigns, green fleet strategies, those types of things are being funded, as well as deep energy retrofits. But again, those trends change over time, and definitely within the timelines that these targets going out to 2050, trends will obviously change quite a bit over that time period.
Okay, so I'm thinking specifically to the loss of, say, woodlots, the emerald ash borer, the trees we lost through that, losing the trail on the waterfront, losing the bluff. There's all kinds of things that are happening and will happen into the future that there's a cost associated with replacement or fixing. So that you're saying can all be taken into consideration in this climate reserve fund?
Yes, that's correct. And it would also be able to possibly fund different studies that look at the risk and vulnerabilities with some of our infrastructure. So we may be able to identify and retrofit things like waterfront trails before they're lost. So for example, the Climate Risk and Resiliency Plan did look at vulnerabilities associated with climate change on our urban tree canopy. So we know as an organization what types of trees and species of trees we can plant so that they are more resilient to the expected impacts of climate change. And that's something that could easily be funded through a climate reserve fund as well.
Thank you. I appreciate the information, and that's very helpful. And I just want to say thank you to Councillor Lee for all of the information he's provided in the motion. Great job.
Thank you. Councillor Crawford was next.
Thank you. I sit on the Ontario Climate Caucus. Once a month we have meetings, and last month we had Whitby come and give us their newly adopted climate change. And what was so it's a very aggressive, very I've never seen anything like it, where they're actually holding developers accountable for creating buildings that are to a green standard, and the different tiered levels. I mean, you know, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. That's a pro. I would love to see that kind of program come in, especially as we know there's going to be aggressive building over the next few years, to be able to hold developers accountable for the environment and the climate. I know that's kind of not what this motion is about, but I was very, very impressed with Whitby's plan. Anyway, I'm happy to support this.
And may I just add, through you, Mayor Collier, to Regional Councillor Crawford, as of right now, we are currently developing what we are calling the Green Development and Environmental Design Guidelines. So these will be Ajax Green Standards. That work is underway and expected to be completed in 2022. And the Whitby Green Standard is definitely one of the green standards that is being investigated and reviewed to inform our green standard.
That is great news. Thank you very much for that.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Anything further on the motion? Okay, seeing none, those in favor? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Next is a matter of going in camera. I wonder, would anybody object to a 5-minute break, or do we want to just push through? Push through? Okay, I don't think this will be too long. Moved by Councillor Tyler Moore and second by Councillor Khan, that council convene to a closed session pursuant to section 239/2B of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended, to discuss personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees. Those in favor of going in camera? I see all hands. That's carried. Mr.
Mr. Mayor, we are live again.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. I'll turn the chair over to Councillor Dyes now while I introduce this motion. Moved by myself, second by Councillor Bauer. I won't read the entire thing, just naming of a new parquet in Ajax. That's it.
Okay. So the motion before us, would you like me to read it, or would you like to read it after I give you an opportunity to speak?
I didn't read it because it was printed in the agenda, Chair, so I just would just leave it.
Okay. So we have this motion before us, and I know that this is something Mayor Collier and Councillor Bauer has worked on. So Mayor Collier, would you like to speak to it?
Nope, I don't have nothing to say on it. Thank you, Chair. Just hopefully will support.
Councillor Bauer?
Not a word. I hope that you will support it, please.
Okay, well, are we naming the individual then? You want me to read that part?
No, we're not naming anything.
Oh, okay, that's what I was confused about. All right. All in favor then of this motion? Any opposed? I can't see any. It's carried. Thank you.
I saw everybody's hands. That was unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Great job, Joanne. Moving on to bylaws, moved by Councillor Lee, second by Councillor Khan, that bylaw number 20-2021 and 228-2021 be read a first, second, third time and passed. Questions, comments on the bylaws? Seeing no hands, those in favor? I didn't see the hands. My screen was freezing a bit. Yeah, I got enough. That's carried. And the confirming bylaw, moved by Councillor Dyes, second by Councillor Bauer, that the bylaw number 29-2021 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Ajax at its regular meeting held on April 19, 2021 be read a first, second, third time and passed. Those in favor? That's carried. I think I might have actually skipped a couple of things there. Are there any notices of the motion?
No.
No. I have one, but it's not ready yet, so I'll just send it off to council when it's ready. Any new business or announcements? Councillor Khan.
Thank you, Chair. You know, every year I take this opportunity to wish Ajax and Durham region and Canada and around the world a happy Ramadan. This time we're 7 days into Ramadan, so it's been a bit late. And, you know, it means a lot to us because Ramadan, the sacrifices the residents make of Ajax for this month, it purifies our community. For whatever it's worth to anybody else, it purifies our community. And at the 20th day of Ramadan, in about 2 weeks, a handful of residents stay in the mosque, a very limited amount, socially distanced, and they call something called ittikaf. And ittikaf, if accepted by Allah, it prevents your community from any major calamities. And trust me, we need all the prayers we can get right now. So, you know, I just wanted to wish the community all safety, and may our ittikaf be accepted during the month of Ramadan. So thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Next, I had Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chair. This is more of a public service announcement. Listen, Ajax is a hotspot. Go to durhamvaccinebooking.ca if you're 18 plus and just get the AstraZeneca vaccine if you are eligible for it, if your doctor says it's okay. Like, it's for me, it's problematic to be in a hotspot municipality and then have our residents vaccine shop, so to speak. I think certain members of council are getting it or have gotten it. I'm signing up first thing tomorrow. That's, I believe, when it opens. Go to durhamvaccinebooking.ca and please sign up. The sooner we get, we all get our shots, the sooner we can start going back to a sense of normalcy. So I'm just imploring. The mayor's done it with a bunch of seniors groups, just addressing vaccine hesitancy. Our town's doing it. Let's just get the shot, please. So that's just my plea to the residents. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And Councillor Dyes was next.
Thank you. I just wanted to announce it's also about vaccines. I'm on the waiting list for the AstraZeneca, and I'm hoping it comes soon. But on Wednesday, on April the 21st, there is going to be a vaccine clinic for residents 50 years and over, and it's a mobile vaccine clinic. and it'll be in front of Bolton C. Falby School between the hours of 11 and 2 p.m. and 4 and 7 p.m. So I'm hoping the rain holds off for all of that. It'll be a great day, and I really encourage residents to go and get their vaccine if you haven't had it yet. So it's a pop-up, what we call a pop-up mobile vaccine unit on Wednesday. So hope to see you there. Thank you.
Thank you. Just clarification, Councillor Lee, you said 18 plus. I've had staff text me and said, I know there are some areas that are 18 plus, but I think in Durham is 40 plus. But
excuse me, sorry, yes, I'm so sorry. I'm 40. I'm not younger than that. That's my fault. So thank you for clarifying. It's 40 plus.
I just wanted to make that clarification. I don't want to get all the calls tomorrow from everybody.
No, that's, yeah, please, 40 plus, 40 plus. If you turn 40 this year.
Thank you for that. Councillor Crawford.
I just had a question around the pop-up vaccination. Is that limited to certain residents? If you just get there and line up, do you get a vaccine? Like, how does that, I'm just curious as to how that's distributed.
My understanding is you do need to make an appointment, or are you talking about the pop-up clinic, the one at?
Yeah, the pop-up one.
I can't really speak to that. I think you can just show up. Is there a member of staff here, Mr. Clerk, that can speak to that?
Through the chair, it's Christy McClarty. I can confirm that it is no appointment is required, so that's a bonus, but it is based on a postal code. And the postal code for that is, I just want to make sure I am correct, it's L1S for tomorrow.
Yep.
Okay, great, because I know there's been some confusion at the testing sites thinking that they're getting vaccines there. So just so that everybody knows, you don't show up there and find out you can't get it. So thank you.
I'll just round that out for you. Tomorrow, great day. Tomorrow, I believe, is the testing at the Ajax Public Library. So that's tomorrow. And then of course, we're gonna have this great pop-up at Falby. And then we are looking at another potential site opening up this week as well. So everyone stay tuned for that information.
Thank you. Further, Councillor Crawford? Okay. Anybody else? Any announcements or new business? Councillor Bauer.
I do, Chair. Thank you, Chair. So just a reminder to everyone that the April 20th waterfront online session has been postponed. So stay tuned for new details for that. It is coming. April 22nd is Earth Day, but it's also Lakeridge Health is hosting a community telephone town hall. I do believe you have to register. You can go to lakeridgehealth.on.ca and it's a phone town hall. And also next Monday, April 26th, Regional Councillor Joanne Dyes and I will be hosting our Ward 3 community meeting. Registration is required for that. And that's at ajax.ca/ward. And it's at 7 o'clock. I really hope to see you there. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other announcements or new business? Mr. Clerk, I think I was negligent when we rose from in camera. I think I was supposed to make the declaration that no decisions were made in camera, but I neglected to do so. So I'll just make that declaration now. No decisions were made and no business was moved forward during our in-camera session.
I'm told you have to redo the whole meeting now, starting from the beginning.
Yeah.
So start with the greeting.
I'll chair the meeting, Councillor Lee. Thank you. We're not doing that. Moving on to the confirming bylaw. Moved by Councillor Dyes, second by Councillor Bauer. The bylaw number 29-2021 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Ajax at its regular meeting held on April 19, 2021 be read a first, second, third time and passed. Those in favor? I see all hands. That's carried. Finally, what we've all been waiting for. Moved by Councillor Crawford, second by Councillor Khan, that the April 19, 2021 meeting of the Council of the Town of Ajax be adjourned. Those in favor? That carries. Councillor Lee.
Nomadland, which in my opinion fares much better